discretion is advised as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Now, are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Here I am, Attack of the B Movies podcast host, Johnny Potoki. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm glad to be back.
Alrighty, and where we last left off, we just decided to tackle, being how we're big sci-fi buffs, just the last original series films of Star Trek, which were 6 in total. We basically just came to the conclusion that, Undiscovered Country, Wrath of Khan, and followed by The Voyage Home were easily the best. And then after they started being more campy and a little more overdrawn and overlong and relying on the visuals, they part 3 and 1 and especially 5 just didn't pan out all that well. They could still easily be enjoyed in a camp mode, and some of them were even so bad they're good, but for the most part, in that retrospect, it was kind of easy to see why most people kind of just went by the whole the evens are the best, the odds are the weakest or not great. And
yeah, it did hold up it did hold up for a while.
Yeah, and so after words, when Rick Berman, one of the Paramount programming directors, basically teamed up with Roddenberry again to bring Star Trek back in the form of The Next Generation. And while those films were going on, it was inevitable that it headed back to the big screen. And so in '94, as they were concluding the whole 7-year run of Next Generation, we still had Deep Space Nine on, and it was only a matter of time before they were going to start having all the other spinoff shows, and we'll get to that on various Paramount networks. And so after The Undiscovered Country was kind of a sleeper hit and showed the original cast led by Kirk off to a good farewell, they decided once again to revisit more Klingon mayhem, more Mad Men, and we take an interesting curse with the franchise here, where it seems like every villain basically has to be the next, if not the next Terminator or Die Hard level villain, they have to be some kind of Khan. We have to try and one up Khan or rival him at least. And so here we are in November 18th of 1994. We have Next Generation director David Carson and Next Generation scribes Ronald D. Moore and Brandon Braga helm Generations. After many reshoots and requesting to shoot the entire film in widescreen to give it a more theatrical experience, the film opens up to mixed reviews but does decent business. So, Johnny, what's your take?
I know I should like this one a lot more than I do. Everyone tells me how this is one of the best ones that had the new cast in it. I think it was okay. I don't think they needed to have another send off for Kirk. I think they could have just left it at the Undiscovered Country and been done with it. So I was kind of surprised it was that they decided to do it, to be honest.
Pretty much it. So looking at the reviews, Kenneth Turan and James Berardinelli and Roger Ebert all essentially called the film as just playing it too safe, for better or worse. Turan writes that it is relying heavily on the viewer's appreciation of the TV shows. Berardinelli and People's Magazine Ralph Novak felt that the film is basically a longer version of the TV show. Jay Carr of the Boston Globe describes this as reassuringly predictable, and that it featured elements that would be recognizable, and that the lack of surprise was surprisingly a benefit in this instance. And Roger Ebert felt that the film was too preoccupied with fan-focused elements that it detracted from the overall story. I would
agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much where it. When I was just revisiting these movies growing up in high school, it really did feel like you were pretty much falling too heavily into the Star Wars or Star Trek camp. But at least Star Wars, you didn't really need to know fucking shit about anything. Excuse my French. You didn't need to know anything. And Star Trek was kind of, I mean, they do it later in some of the TV shows, like in following this following movie on First Contact, they mentioned Worf's ship, the Defiant, has been injured following whatever encounter with the Borg on Deep Space Nine episode later, and so then it just kind of becomes okay, well,
Yeah,
whatever happened to make it more accessible.
it really kind of screwed with I don't want to say screwed with the canon, because canon's subjective to some extent. I mean,
Please, I mean, there are
but
no wrong opinions, but
it
I mean,
really, like, I mean, the Enterprise B had been mentioned numerous times in numerous media across Star Trek, and there was never mention of Kirk dying on it or Kirk saving the day on it. So it was just bizarre that they chose to go with that. Like, I don't remember any ever reading or seeing anything mention that there was this problem at the beginning on its shakedown cruise.
yeah, it's pretty much it.
It
Entertainment
was cool seeing
Weekly.
I guess it was cool seeing Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off captain a ship.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this also just kind of came out at the wrong time. I mean, '94 had so many other humongous blockbusters. We're talking Leon the Professional, Speed, True Lies. So it's a big year,
I mean,
and
really,
it seemed
Speed and True Lies are the two that you had to compete with. Like, Leon's a great movie, but I don't know how much the
right.
masses really went to see it. But Speed and True Lies are two of the most, two big blockbusters.
That's a fair point, and I mean, Leon got cropped up so much. I mean, everyone looks at it now and they're like, "How did anyone in the states hate it?" And it's like, well, because Sony, modified it and left out a bunch of subtext and everything. So it
Yeah.
didn't really catch on until it was, playing endlessly on cable TV and, the pay channels. So
Yep.
that's another slow burn. And I still to this day, I mean, it's one of those, I can watch part of it. I can never watch the whole thing if it's on, regular TV
Hmm.
channels. Sci-Fi Channel would play it endlessly. It was one of those, I mean, like you say, I mean, it did kind of feel like
It felt like
it's
fan fiction.
it's a fan fiction, and I mean, people even later on, don't get me wrong, Shatner's a cool guy, well, based on having to encounter him, but he's not that great a writer, and so you can see why he's pretty hunky dory in many of the interviews about this movie, talking about working with another captain, Patrick Stewart as Picard, as well as just
Yeah.
having fun playing Kirk again. But at the same
I think
time,
that's more what it was, is he didn't want to let go of being Kirk.
there's that, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I think he has a cool fight, but then you can kind of see why everyone complains about him dying, and at the same time is like you look at all the alternate endings that they never used, and it doesn't matter, he dies one way or the other, and a lot of them are more wimpier than the official version that's used. In this version, he pretty much just sacrifices himself, but he did a bunch of other books afterwards where he basically described how somehow like the Nexus had brought him back to life or some shit.
Yeah,
And
that's where another problem mine comes in, is that I appreciate stuff like I like Star Wars, Star Trek, and Doctor Who. Well, the last season, but I like those three shows. But the thing is,
yeah,
for time travel, I like Doctor Who. For interdimensional kind of things, there was Sliders. Like, every show had its thing, and this was the movie where I guess Voyage Home was, but this is the movie that really had Star Trek go off the rails, and now it's all about different dimensions and time travel, and to this day they keep beating that horse, and I'm like, you're supposed to be exploring the galaxy and finding new things. I don't need you to constantly be jumping all over. Anyways, but this is one of the
yeah,
movies that kind of kicked that off.
essentially it. So yeah, I mean, Harv Bennett, producer of the original series movie franchise, has already left the building, and so now we got Rick Berman, who's been kind of based off reading the 50-Year Journey Part 2 book, which gets a bunch of different book interviews
Hmm.
with the cast and crew. It pretty much uh, just gets down to that point where it's just like, okay, so long story short, I mean, Berman is a yes man, but then once Ron Berry passes, he pretty much just makes it his show where he's like, we got to
Right.
make Gene proud, we got to make the fans proud,
He
and
becomes and he thinks that he can't do any wrong. He basically becomes George Lucas. That anything he
you
says is
know,
what is correct.
yeah, well, hell, I'll half agree with that. I mean, because George was always kind of hardy har and just tired of saying, being told no to everything. And I mean,
Yeah, but
with this
look at
guy,
the three movies that when he wasn't told no what happened.
oh, that's fair. I mean,
But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I try to find the good in most Star Wars movies, although I mean, I can't do most of the new ones, but I like Rogue One and The Mandalorian and how they're at least paying tribute to the whole franchise and making their own story. But I mean, we'll get
That'll
to
be
that.
another show.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, we're gonna get to Abrams here in a minute. So I mean, Berman with here, he's kind of just he's such a contrarian that you kind of get some of his contradictions here in the track franchise. He's just like you say, too proud of everything. And it's like, well, give us something to be proud of. And so, like you say, the 1 minute this is Data's movie where Geordi's trying to help him rediscover his humanity. Then the
Yeah.
next minute it's Soren's movie where we got, Malcolm McDowell doing his best Hans Gruber or Khan impression. So,
Yeah.
he's got an interesting story, but it's kind of underused. And then we got the Klingon sisters who he's working with. So that just gives Worf something to do with, and Rikers as well to, kick their asses in outer space. And then once again, we go back to Picard trying to find Kirk, who's been trapped in the Nexus. So like you say, it's an extended episode and it's all scattershot. And the writers themselves, Braga and Ronald D. Moore, have also spoken on how they were disappointed with this. I mean, and to be fair, I'm not going to hold that against them because I mean,
No,
even before they went on to do that, and I mean, they were working so hard even years before they got to become part of the Track family. And I mean, they were smart people who do what every good writer does, which is justify everything, as opposed to insist, that there be a name for everyone or everything, like the Lucas canon. But I mean, even they admit that after a while that the movie just kind of the story itself just loses itself afterwards.
I mean, it's really kind of a hard watch now. Like when it came out, I was probably more hyped for it, and then I watched it and I was like, I don't know. But now when it's on, it doesn't work for me. It's like it didn't work much back then. But like there's a subplot of Picard realizing that he's the last of the bloodline because his brother and nephew died, but they never really bring that up again. Like it's mentioned in the beginning, and he's all distraught, and then it's just like,
pretty much. It could have worked as an episode, but it just somehow doesn't work 100% at movies. So I pretty much just agree that I mean, for as an action movie, it kind of does the trick, but most of that is in the second portion.
Yeah,
2/3 of the movie. So I mean, it's definitely a good. So I mean, like you say, we kind of needed it to just kind of get a transition for the movie, but as a force to be reckoned with hey, Track's going to the movies, it again deserved so much more, and they're really hard on it on the riff tracks. Commentary, they flat out tear this movie a new one, and it's like I mean, and they're already been hard on even the good and bad lesser Track movies, and this one there's like, oh, Shatner's back again, and it doesn't make fucking difference. I kind of,
and this is an odd number one. Keep in mind,
there's that, and I mean, it's not boring, but at the same time, it does have some slow moments that don't need to be in there.
And I guess if you were bringing Next Generation to the big screen, Next Generation had a following on its own. You didn't need to cross over.
You didn't need to cross over. Well, better yet, I mean, they could have just had Scotty there since he had already been in an episode. Just have him make a cameo.
Yeah, McCoy was in I think the first episode, but I think McCoy had passed on by this point.
He had already passed on by then. Yeah. It's cool seeing Chekhov, and they introduced this one gal, and they're like, "Oh, surprise! She's Sulu's daughter. She's his next kin."
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And so,
oddly, Sulu
just
not
doing too much. Yeah, and this was supposed to be directed by Leonard Nimoy, who had already written and directed some of the movies, and he fucking hated the script. He's just like, "This is not Track. This is just shit." He actually said that to their face. This is shit. And so, you definitely feel like Berman is just overworking everybody so fucking much. It's like you don't need that. You gotta people don't work well when they're under pressure. It never works. And I mean, this goes for any profession. And so every time, every manager, every boss does this because they feel like they're being willed on by their boss and the other people. And it's like, guess what? You're not gonna have any improvement. if you do this.
I think a big part of it was the fact that really Star Trek had been funding everything else Paramount did for the
Yes.
7 years that Next Generation was on.
And to treat it this way.
Star Trek in the last like 3 movies of the original series really were like all Paramount had. So I think it was just like, we need Star Trek, we need Star Trek, we need a new movie, we need a new movie. You know, it was like, I mean, they really, yeah.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. I give it a 3 out of 5, but if it was on a bad day, it'd be a 2.
I'd probably go a solid 2.5 out of 5 just to make it
No, that's fine.
It's not horrible. It's not great. It's just I haven't had a day where I've been like, I gotta watch Generations again.
Well, there's that, and I mean, it's kind of it's the Trek movie, kind of like Part 3, Search for Spock, where you just take it out, either just have something on in the background or test out your new sound system. But that's it.
Yeah, you know? I mean, effects look pretty good, except for when the saucer crashed on the planet. That looked like an HO train set, but.
No, that's a good point. So, I mean, Brent, we pretty much just covered this all. Pros, the villain's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's cool seeing.
It starts the trend of Star Trek villains blowing shit up with a probe.
Yeah, very much. And it gives most of the cast enough to do, but I'll hit into that mostly in the cons section. Music by the TNG and Deep Space Nine composer Justin McCarthy ranges from mostly acceptable but somewhat repetitive and unimaginative if you're listening to it, without the imagery. But effects are good, like always for Trek. Sound mixing is mostly good. We'll get to the cons. California scenery at Fire State Park and Lone Pine are help tell the story. Widescreen definitely. There's some good shots by the cinematographer of Chinatown and Scarface.
I mean, widescreen was the way you had to go at this point too. I mean,
absolutely.
That was definitely some smart thinking,
Yeah, because it wasn't Berman's call. It was someone, the David Carson, who unfortunately this movie kind of sank his career. So I'll put that in the con section. He had already done, other UK and shows, and it's a shame that he didn't really do as much after this. He did some occasional TV, but by then he was long gone. He was just doing a few occasion TV specials. So acceptable directing, but very limited due to the restrained script.
Yep. Cool
ideas, not always well executed for the most part. In fact, I'll take it back. So moving on to the con section. Dr. Crusher is literally given nothing to do here.
No, she's just there to be eye candy.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically.
Yeah, and her only scenes end up being the most cringe-inducing scenes during when Data kind of has a violent outburst.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny seeing Data get away with some profanity, just like Kirk and Spock going all, oh shit, but his storyline is drawn out to where it just gets annoying. It's a good performance, don't get me wrong, but it's just like, we didn't need to focus on Data this time.
Yeah, it was funny because it wasn't supposed to be a movie about Data, but they spent so much time on him.
Yeah. Pretty much. Like... LeVar Burton does good as Geordi when he's on screen, but like you say, I mean, since it's not his movie or Data's movie, then they're just not well utilized. They do their job, but it's restricted. And so going on to the cons, more the editing. Again, they're doing the trick with what you see on screen, but at the same time you still at moments just pretty much just see shots that are too workmanlike or just to get it done as opposed to get it done and do a good job. You know what I mean? So
it didn't seem like it didn't seem like anybody from the people filming it to the people acting in it really was having a good time.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try...
They must be destroyed on sight!
The new Podcast Cure-All, sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of...
They must be destroyed on sight!
As needed, and let the hosts
Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We might talk about video games, music. Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yes.
I am the master storyteller of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers, the Google Play, Apple Podcasts,
what else?
Podbean,
what else?
Podcast Addict,
goddamn,
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair to say all that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Yeah. Don't run the listeners away, PJ.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen, and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of it.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this movie.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little history all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was.
How did you watch this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
It's time, let's check our queue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one last plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
We now continue with our program.
That's pretty much it. And
It didn't translate on the screen that they were all glad to be there. Like you said, the acting wasn't bad, but the parts were just disjointed. Like Geordi was kind of like there just to get kidnapped. Data was there just here's half the movie's Data story, and then okay, we're done with that. It just
totally concur. And that pretty much leads to the next point. Having too much going on just leads to more confusion, and when people are confused, interest varies and pretty much dissolves, and that's just it. By introducing the Klingon sisters, even though they get a good comeuppance, just their introduction just sucks. I'm interested in Shinzon and why he's a madman, addicted to wanting to revisit the Nexus and use this as a weapon.
I actually want to be put in charge of the in charge of the 1701D, because in many video games I've taken out far more than two birds of prey. So
there you go.
Another movie where the most powerful ship in the fleet can't handle two ships.
Yeah, this was definitely. I
know they had a little edge because of what happened with Geordi, but still, it's like really.
Totally concur. It does at times feel like just the visual effects are being the star, and again, that just gets annoying when only the effects are doing the talking. This isn't Tron. There's no need for the effects to do the star here when there's enough of a world that we like coming back to. And so once again, everyone just feels very constrained, and how many rewrites there were, and they still couldn't come up with a good choice. I'm not going to blame that on the writers. That Rick Berman gets the fault for that, because he was running the show, and unlike the previous producer, he didn't seem to know how to just. I mean, he's already pretty much justifying the budget to Paramount, and at the same time telling them how to, iron everything. It's like, no.
He was running it like a TV show, not like a movie.
Yes, and they should have given it to someone else to just run the movie franchise, and he should have just he should have, if anything, just been the bodyguard and protected the TV crew, Yeah,
but I think I think he had too much on his own plate, and I don't know what his experience with producing movies was, but I don't think it was a lot.
He had like George Lucas, a documentary background, so as a result, he was thinking like a documentarian, but not like a mainstream blockbuster filmmaker. So he was very tech savvy, but they had millions here, so he should have just again said, "Hey, by the way, you're not invited as a creative consultant." Because I looked at some of the episodes, he came up with the ideas for or directed, and they weren't impressive. They were also on autopilot. So it's just like, he should have just been there to protect them and make sure everyone got paid, and just hired other people. In fact, he should have put his partner Michael Piller in charge of this, because Michael Piller.
Yeah, I would agree.
That he died so fucking young from.
Yeah.
Looking at it again.
59.
He passed away. In November of 2005. He had succumbed to head and neck cancer and died at his home. And everybody liked working with him. They said he was kind of socially awkward. He was kind of he wasn't a people person, but he was a good, just, go get it, attitude. Everyone liked his positive energy. And again, he had sold scripts to Cagney and Lacey and Simon & Simon, and that's where he stayed for a while, becoming a producer. And
he was a true writer along with being a producer.
Yeah. And he would always outline everything. Everybody loved his energy, because when they first started out, they had Maurice Hurley, who was spoiled rotten. what's his name, Burton Armus, who later worked on as a creative consultant on NYPD Blue. Started out in the earlier seasons, and he was part of that primetime Emmy-winning crew in '95. He noted how Maurice Hurley was pretty much doing, if he wasn't doing what Rick Berman wanted, he was pretty much kissing Roddenberry's ass, and everybody hated working for him because, I mean, look, contrasted with today's writers, Matthew Weiner's gotten controversy for being a horse's ass to work with on Mad Men and the Romanovs, but everyone also at the end of the day said at least he gave us our rightful credit, especially if we rewrote it, Right. So, and Maurice wouldn't do that. Maurice, if he rewrote it, he instantly, he took all the credit for it. And then sometimes some of the writers would just say, fuck it, just credit me as a producer because you destroyed my vision for this fucking show, Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, they're already dealing with dementia-ridden Roddenberry, who's acting very lawful and nice, and then the next moment acting like a total horse's ass because his memory's going and his lawyer is also getting in there. And that's pretty much where I put Berman. He's has the same mindset as the lawyer, where he's like, hey, how about I take a stab at Ryan? He's like, no, it's not your field. Let the other guys and if the story sucks, just drop it. He'll be fine. Or better yet, just take one subplot and have that be the movie. If this had
they could have trimmed it down and focused more on one thing, and it would have been a much better movie. In fact, a Next Generation movie about Data coming back to becoming human or something, like you could have. There were many options they could have went with that would have been better.
Yeah, and so as a result, Data kind of curses this franchise indirectly, and we'll get to that in a good and a bad way for future installments. So it's just a shame that everyone felt let's focus on the robots. Like, let's not. Let's focus on the other guys.
Especially since you're paying Shatner how much money to be in the damn thing.
Yeah, Shatner, when he's on screen, he is hysterical, but at the same time, it feels like he's in a totally different movie. Like they're using the same area as fucking Final Frontier, for all I know.
To be fair, he's the only one that seemed to be having fun.
He really was. He was glad to be back after not playing the character and being the host of various talk shows and TJ Hooker. So it's cool to have him back. This is just too workmanlike. It's a half and a half. I don't. It's not bad enough to be unwatchable or unbearable, but at the same time, it's like the weaker original series movies where it's not the first one you put on. So I mean, well, it was, and it's just amazing how so many people vary on this so much to where I'm just like, I don't even really want to talk about it because I just know it divides the fandom.
I have friends that think it's fantastic.
Really? Because
and I'm like, really? Because I don't see it.
All the other friends and podcasters I've had on here just are like, ho hum. So
well, that's how I feel about it. So
and that's fine. I mean, I don't hate it enough, but it could have easily been a TV special, and it would have been way better because then we could forget about it easier or be less harsh on it because different expectations. So it's pretty much how I feel about lesser episodes of Babylon 5. It's just one of those.
It's the Star Wars Christmas special of Star Trek movies.
Oh, that's harsh. I thought that was part 5.
Is that okay, that's true. No, you're right. That would be part 5. That is true.
Oh.
Part 5 would be that. You're correct.
It's funny you bring that up though, because if I had to talk about the Star Wars Holiday Special, if I wanted to really troll someone, I would say that's the best Star Wars movie ever, just to get someone's reaction.
It introduced Boba Fett.
Oh my God.
That's the justification. That's the justification for people trying to say they like it.
Is it really? Luke and Carrie Fisher sing. That's not a good idea. Han kills a stormtrooper. That's not a good. Oh God. It's one of those. Even with the riff tracks, I can't even watch that one. It's just, and I'm not even that big a Star Wars fan as I am a track guy now. And it's funny. I used to be the biggest Star Wars guy over to the track, and then I just had a complete reversal the older I got. I just got sick of Star Wars fans treating each other like shit, and then I just kind of liked how Trekkies were kind of laid back or more comedic, if you will.
Yeah, until the Kelvin movies came out.
Yeah, that's true too. We're definitely hit on that, on how then it just basically became Star Wars, 2.0. It's like, God damn it, I was hoping this wouldn't be.
All three of the movies / shows or franchises I really like now have extremely divided fandoms, and it bugs the hell out of me, like you're saying, because it's like, just watch it and enjoy it if you want to enjoy it. If you don't, you don't. You don't need to, like people that constantly watch something, they're like, it sucks. Then why are you still watching it? Like, what? Go somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's an addicting show where you can't turn away from it, or it's a bad soap opera where you gotta tune in because it's guilty pleasure TV, it is still
I'm not gonna say it
like
sucks
one of
because
those.
you know it sucks. I mean,
Well, either that, or how about looking at Riverdale. A lot of people say it's garbage, but they still watch it anyway because they like the plot twists or how stupid they are, as well as the sexy people. So there is all these style over substance movies also. So yeah, this is where we do kind of get into style over substance level. Fortunately, it gets another shot. I mean, track is still it makes good business to warrant a sequel, and we get this is really gonna be interesting to see. First Contact in '96, pretty much. It doesn't retcon anything, but it just goes more interesting. And Jonathan Frakes, who plays Will Riker himself, gets to direct this in the next installment after. And he explains in the 50-year-old journey that he was given the chance after showing up and taking lessons from the other directors and producers, being in the editing room with them. So I've known people who worked with him on the Good Guys TV show here in Dallas, and they said he was lovely. His nickname is Two Takes Frakes because
yep, that's what I've heard too.
Really, you've heard that joke also? Okay, awesome.
I've read that in many places. Yep.
Yeah, so I can't. Which is weird because I can't find it on IMDb. I think I even added the trivia one day. It was like, best known as Two Takes Frakes, because he is always on budget and on time, and he pretty much plays game here. And Berman lucks out here. He takes all the credit. No, he came out with this, conjured up the story, but it's pretty much Ronald D. Moore and Brandon Braga really hashing it out. They get co-producing this time from Marty Hornstein and Peter Lawrenston. Marty, was a unit production manager on some of the other tracks as well as other TV shows. And Peter Lawrenston was involved with Wrath of Khan as another producer and a supervising producer for Deep Space Nine. So yeah,
this one had a lot more cred when it came to the production people.
Pretty much, and this is where I mainly knew Stan Winston from growing up. I knew him from this, and Terminator, Alien, and all that. And it helps that, Ronald D. Moore admitted in a chat that the similarities to, being a diehard on a spaceship as well as Terminator and Aliens were well founded. That's pretty much where they go to. They pretty much always were going to those kind of concepts, even when they were coming up with, other ship tropes. And It's just cool to see how basically, again, Stan gets to show some great special effects, and again, like he usually is, he knows how to tell a story with effects, and much like Jurassic Park, this is definitely what you go to. Jonathan Frakes refers to this as a horror movie, and while it's not a big, absolute and like, it is kind of.
It's not Evil Dead, but yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm not even scared by Evil Dead, but I know what you mean. Like, it's not batshit crazy, gore exploding. Right. It's not Scanners, but it is. It is that. I couldn't resist. Oh God.
I love that one.
What a Cronenberg track would look like is anyone's guess. The closest you probably get there is Starship Troopers, but yeah, no. So it's another good illustration of epic storytelling. The parallels to Moby Dick and them fighting the evil cyborg race, the Borg, which Picard was once captured and almost became a part of, is well rounded here. They pretty much lucked out here. They did the exact same Wrath of Khan formula, not just of a ship under siege and fighting a personal battle, but also because it's a battle that started out as a brief, well, Khan was just a one guest star appearance. This was a recurring storyline.
And I mean, this is basically the Cybermen done right.
Yeah, it's a good Cyberpunk movie.
Yeah, well, no, but I've been thinking like the Cybermen from Doctor Who, right? Like that was the original race of that was the original assimilated. They started off as humans and did what they had to do to survive and became this race that was hive-minded, very much like the Borg. And once they left the second Doctor, the Cybermen were like, shit, they were ridiculous.
Oh, totally.
Star Trek took a very similar concept with the Borg and made them menacing. And like the Borg is probably one of the greatest villains in sci-fi TV shows and movies, probably in the top 25.
Which is ironic because what the writers hated most was writing for the Borg, and that's what's just and I know we can't think of it because we find them so fascinating, but to them they had like no persona. They were just mindless drones. But it's like somehow writing about something they're not close to at all somehow brings out the best in them.
You're basically trying to write for a computer. You're writing for a robot. It's emotionless. But
I totally understand.
Job.
Well, and I mean, it's just cool how they're able to go kind of into this without going full out B movie or Roger Corman. Yeah. And this was one of the most well received before being surpassed somehow by the 2009 film. We'll get to that. Joel Goldstein, the son of Jerry, who's been scoring most of these movies, helps his father to produce the film's score. Yep. And ILM, I mean, these effects have not dated at all. At all.
But like you just said, who did the effects? Which group?
Industrial Light and Morons, but and Magic. Sorry, I'm taking from MST3K Space.
I know, I remember. Yeah, from Space Mutiny.
Yeah, I couldn't help myself, but
that's cool.
I mean, somehow they do some of their best stuff earlier on, but like they completed this in less than 5 months, and I mean, they hit. Yeah, they hit on it more on how they had to line it up with the shots, however many frames per minute, and what seems like barely most in the moment.
It does not feel like a 25-year-old movie.
It really doesn't. And the cinematographer of this, he's a lovely guy. Matthew F. Leonardi, who goes on to shoot the next film, had already. Jonathan Frakes hired him because he loved his work on Strange Days the year prior. But I mean, this man has also went on to shoot other stuff like he had already shot Poltergeist. And he would later shoot a bunch of other sci-fi horror films like Species 2 and what have you. But yeah, no, he does a banged up job here.
I love Strange Days. I have no idea what happens in that movie, but I love that movie.
And it's one of those, I mean, the ideas are better than like kind of enjoying, but like you say, it's a fun experience and very chaotic movie. And
this First Contact there's not much bad to say about First Contact.
Yeah, I mean, you have cameos by the Doctor from Voyager, but it's a non-intrusive cameo. Really, it's cool how we have Nurse Agawa and Barclay and Lieutenant Barclay make cameos, and again, non-intrusive. There's a lot of original characters that bring so much to where you wish. I'm glad that they continued some of them in other movies. They bring back the character Cochrane from the original series Metamorphosis episode. As the founder of the Warp Tribe. He was supposed to be played by Tom Hanks, but thank God they give it to well-casted James Cromwell, who already, a long-time track guest star, and
Yeah, man, I think Tom Hanks is a damn fine actor, but I think Cromwell was perfect.
Well, and
I don't know if Hanks would fit that role, to be honest. Which is hard. Which is weird saying that because he can do damn anything. But yeah.
Well, no, I know what you mean. It's just like when we say I'm not sure how I'd see Sam Jackson or someone else in the role. Because again.
Sam Jackson would have been badass as Cromwell or in Cromwell's character.
No, I know what you mean, but yeah, it's funny how the minute you cast somebody, they just take on a whole different identity. And so when I never get too offended when I see someone saying someone is miscast, because what they're just going for is like, hey, we're not saying the performance is bad, it's just they didn't do the part justice, which is just a nice way of saying, hey, it was, but here they restrain themselves from stunt casting. They get Alfre Woodard, who's another beloved actress, and this is what I came back to her time and again. After being in so many Spike Lee and John Stiles movies, and Primal Fear is the Judge, the same year, and she and James always kind of become the go-to, supporting actors for, James mostly abstained from TV for a while before the mid 2000s, but here he's just doing occasional guest spots and just a lot of big intense movies, and then she's doing less TV but just lots of big movies before kind of also jumping the TV gun. But they all, and throughout the 2000s, they kind of get in a lot of these similar roles as being the go-to scientists or rebel fighters or presidential type characters.
Mhm.
So, Jordy, it's cool seeing him without, his glasses for once. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
Troy gets some hysterical lines. They're not going to be that funny if you're a kid, but if you're an adult, you will laugh your ass off with what the colorful commentary they got to say. It's cool seeing Franks as Riker also just take a back seat. He looks way more comfortable here.
And I think they all do, and I think
Yeah.
they all look like they're enjoying themselves. But like when somebody has a good time filming a show or a movie, it translates to the screen to me. Like you
Totally.
could tell that they enjoyed it, and part of it's because Frakes was behind the camera. He was
Absolutely.
the director, and Frakes. No, I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about him ever.
Yeah, same. And that's rare because there was a few directors. I think they said Will Whedon said Rob Bowman, who again his work on Castle and X Files is well renowned,
Yeah.
but he apparently he and this other old school guy, I forget his name, but he was a hard ass, did not like Whedon at all. They're like, yeah, stay in your fucking corner, kid. So it is interesting, but I mean that's just a kid doing adults, so different mentality. But no, I don't doubt the older guy, but who knows? Bowman might have not been a people person. He might have been just, hey, let's get the shot. And to be fair, with Next Generation, they always started out as, we don't, a lot of the directors did say, we don't know what we're shooting, what we were going to end up with. We just had to choose and go with it. And so here, because they got more time, Frank's, has been on the set enough. He knows how long it takes for certain scenes. They hired the same art director, Herman Zimmerman, who had already worked on Next Generation show, as well as, believe it or not, the last two original series movies, Final Frontier and Undiscovered Country. So he definitely, they have a good mix of TV and movie talents.
Yeah, the movie had the pedigree for everything.
Well, and they kind of, I'm not going to give them too much credit. I don't think they learned their lesson from the original series because, I mean, let's face it, we're going to go on to these other ones, but they are still kind of, it's like they get some kind of, either the scripters or the producers just get an idea, we're not going to get another shot of this. We have to go all out. So it's a shame that track just gets into this habit. It's like one good, one eh. And so
this is one of the few that involve time travel that I'm like, oh, okay, I'm okay with this one.
Same. I mean, it's one of the few where it's
because it worked perfect for the story. Like it did what it had to do. It was the time travel wasn't the main focus of the movie.
Pretty much. I mean, that's how you should do a time travel movie instead of let's go into 12 Monkeys for the billionth time or rip off Back to the Future. It's just like, no, let's not. Let's do it like Doctor. Let's make it campy like Doctor Who, where he's like, yeah, the world's going to shit. Let's figure out what to do. Or even Red Dwarf. But Red Dwarf is a good example of something that wouldn't really work as a movie, arguably. But
I think they're making one actually.
Oh well, hopefully they go all out for comedy. Let's get someone like Carl Urban.
Yeah, like even Star Trek 4 though, it had time travel in it, but I mean there was so much more
after 20 minutes.
Well, yeah, but there was so much more interaction. Like it was made like where they weren't trying to blend in. You know, like it was. You could tell they were awkward. In this, they knew what their mission was. They knew what they were trying to do. They were, it was a much different approach, and that's what I think made it great.
That's actually pretty cool because I mean, they kind of do reference Part 4 loosely by saying, "Hey, what was good about that movie? It wasn't the time travel that was good. It was the fact that we got all this, spare time with the people we like. Let's show why they're beloved." Fun fact: Matthew F. Leonardi, is unfamiliar with the track galore when Franks approaches him. So to prepare for the assignment, he studies the previous 4 films in the franchise, who each had a different cinematographer, and he spends several days going to the sets of Deep Space Nine and Voyager. So perfect. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Instead of just imitating or going in blind or just, fuck anything. Yep. This is my shit. It's cool how he studies it and he's like, I know what I'm going to bring to the table. So there's a lot of filming in Tucson, Arizona. There's a lot of other just looking around, studying other NASA stuff. That's what I really like about this. This isn't just, this wasn't a warship that they were designing. They were inventing, space travel. So
yeah, watching them do that felt like when you watched like The Right Stuff with Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier.
Yes,
it had that same feel. Like You're
Great
like
comparison.
what's gonna happen if we hit warp 1? What's gonna happen? You know, it had that feel of like excitement and anticipation, and it was well done. I liked it.
Pretty much. Some critics still aren't as crazy about this. They feel like it's overhyped, but I'm gonna have to disagree with them. I don't think they're at all right in saying there is no characterization. I mean, the Borg Queen.
No.
We haven't even gotten to her yet. Alice Krige, great British actress, been in other very evil movies. I mean, I've seen her on MI5, also known as Spooks, as
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
final season villain. She can play any kind of accent, any time of characterization, and every time I see her in a British or American show, I'm always like, Borg Queen, you know, Alice Krige, the best. She, even though she's playing an ugly character, I see why critics say, you know, you understand why she seduces people. She just has this whole, you know, my sex slave, you're my, you know, keeper, you're my kid, you know, this creepiness. Critics compared the Borg to the creatures from Hellraiser. Well, that's saying something. Shit.
The Cenobites. Yeah.
I can see that. I mean, and that's why I joke too when I apparently Hellraiser in space, you know,
I never thought of
Bloodline.
that way, but okay.
Yeah, no one else really talks about it, but it's also kind of called, you know, Die Hard Aliens in Space, but with Hellraiser. Or I always thought it was kind of similar to this movie because that also kind of deals with a character origin story through kind of a time travel loop, and I always wondered if they somehow took from this. But it's even funnier because you know, that one feels more like a Doom movie, and this one it feels like at times like what's his name, Worf is playing a game of Doom with all the red shirts that get killed in this movie. And it's definitely creepy.
That's right.
And
There are a lot of them that go down.
well, that's true, and I like how they do a good job. I mean, just like on this main show, and it works even better at a movie. You don't know when the Borg are going to have shields around them.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like the droideka in Star Wars, or even going back to the original Star Wars. You don't know what Vader's going to do next. You know, is he going to destroy something, or is he going to just breathe heavily in the shadow and then, you know, lash out at you, or just not even do anything, just monologue. And so the Borg, they do a good job at, you know, definitely. I can tell a lot of these stuntmen and character actors definitely get a humongous, you know, residuals every time this comes on TV because
yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, because this is played so nonstop because it's just one of the more accessible movies. And so here's the controversial question: is this number 2 to Wrath of Khan, or number 3 if we're going by Undiscovered Country, or is this the best of the best? I still don't have the answer. I love all 3 equally, so I mean, there is no answer. There's just opinion, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
for
me, it's definitely one of those top 3. I mean, for me, I don't think I'd say it's the best of the best.
Yeah, I have a few.
I think Frakes was it did a fantastic job with it. I still, to me,
Fun fact,
because of the
you know
political
who he was
intrigue.
inspired by? He was inspired by James Cameron and Ridley Scott.
God, I can't stand Cameron anymore.
Well, I'm the same way, but I mean.
But yeah, no,
I
but back in the day, he was a fantastic. Yeah, Ridley Scott.
This is his T2 by many means. This is his Alien / T2.
Well, for me, what Undiscovered Country had was the political intrigue.
Yes.
And, you know, that this is a great movie, but that's not really there. You know.
Yeah, you see like maybe 1 or 2 scenes with him talking to others guys of starship captains, and you instantly get a sense. What's even funnier, Data gets to kick so much ass in just like the first 20 minutes just by pushing a, you know, fire torpedo button.
Right.
And then, ironically, if you look more closely, you can clearly see that 2 ships get killed in the giant ass blast that he leaves. I'm like, oh, friendly fire. Fun fact: another discovered Easter egg that's been noticed, especially by the various track magazines and the creators at ILM who also worked on Star Wars. If you pause for a few seconds, you can see the Millennium Falcon at this battle.
The Borg battle?
Yeah,
I've heard that.
Go with the Memory Alpha. Encyclopedia.
I've seen the picture. I got to look it up again, but I want to say I remember this coming up.
Yeah,
this came up about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they were talking about this.
Yeah, just a funny thing. So everyone always jokes, "Hey, Trek and Wars are unofficially in the same fucking universe," just like R2-D2 makes a cameo in the 2009 Track Explosion movie.
That's right.
It's just like Jesus. So everyone's having fun here, and it just definitely shows. Stan, again, he knows how to complement the various dread and creepiness. the movie manages to have a rare mix of intelligence without feeling like, hey, you're just monologuing about to get killed. While
And
also
and a fair amount of action.
a fair amount of action, but it's like the best kind of action. Like, it. Don't get me wrong. I can do stuff by infamous guys. I mean, everyone has their favorites. I like Antoine Fuqua and Peter Berg, but I don't like Michael Bay as much as those guys, but I can watch his stuff too. So you know what I mean. Like, this is kind of more.
I would agree with you, except man, I love Days of Thunder.
Oh well.
Oh wait, that was Bruckheimer. That was Bruckheimer, not Bay. Never
Well,
mind.
that was Tony Scott, Bruckheimer. But no, there you go. I mean, yeah, Tony Scott's another example. Is like, I like him and Michael Mann. Maybe not as much as those other guys, but I mean, Tony is kind of the rare instance where even people who hate loud blockbusters even like him because he at least has a cool story and style. So here, I mean, Frank's. It's a shame that he didn't do as many movies, but for his brief theatrical run as a director, supervising the story, making sure he understands it, and even getting a few good lines when he's even acting in the camera. Much applause to him.
Yeah, he did a lot more. He did a lot more TV stuff after these two movies, but I always thought he was a great director. Even his TV episodes that he directed were always good. I mean,
well, that's just it, because he would always try and bring something new to the table, and I pretty much compare him to even other filmmakers like Brad Turner on Stargate SG-1, as well as what's his name, John Cassar on 24. Those guys, they love movies, they love TV, and they in their heart they love creating the Hitchcockian level suspense because of just look at the darkly lit camera angles they go for. They love it. They want to spook you. They want to have fun with you and get an emotional response at the same time. So they definitely went to that same school. As like, we got to make our shows like a movie, and and they use every source of stuff they can possibly throw at their disposal, and he definitely creates his signature here. So, followed up 2 years later by Insurrection, which also opens up to more mixed to negative reviews, and
which I'm surprised by that, because I honestly thought this one was pretty solid.
I'm there with you. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have pals who they're more Star Wars fans than they are track guys, but they pretty much, I kid you not, they hate all the Next Generation movies. I'm like, what? Okay.
Wow. Well, to each their own, I guess. I mean,
I don't get it. So
I wonder if it's some of it's they just say they hate it. Like, I got a buddy that says he hates everything that Disney's done with Star Wars, but then he's like, "Well, I've never seen this." I'm like, "So you hate it, but you've never seen it?"
Yeah. So it's really, this is another one that just divides everyone nonstop. The Sona race here is kind of similar to I want to say, well, that might be offensive to some people. I'm not going to say they're like cons people, but they're definitely like another just playing God kind of race that you would see on Next Generation, or
like the Q.
Yes,
in a sense.
That, or even maybe the Cardassians, alien race on Deep Space.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the family in
oh,
LA.
Thank God, no. There's been plenty of jokes about that. H&I started doing jokes about that even recently, and I'm like, no, don't stop. It's not funny anymore. But yeah,
I think this was a good movie, but I think a lot of it, the mixed reactions, also come from the plot is a little bit on the stranger side.
Yeah.
In a way.
It's strange. It definitely takes a while to get going, but I feel like the last 2/3.
Yeah, that's true. But you go from trying to save the human race's warp efforts to what's the movie with Sean Connery where they're in like the rainforest and they find the cure for cancer, but they're cutting the rainforest down?
Zardoz. Oh, Medicine Man.
Medicine Man. This is kind of like Picard is Medicine Man in a sense.
Pretty much.
So it's kind of an odd, like.
I'll do you one better. This is Trek's Seven Samurai: Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, okay, I'll go with that.
Because they're saving a village, from a big tyrannical race. So I'll give you the bad. They kind of go to the flaws of Generations. Don't get me wrong, I love the California scenery, but after a while, it's like, can we do something else besides run in the jungle?
Well, you recognize it because you live in Dallas, right? I just recorded last night.
I've been to. I have family in San Francisco, so I've seen some of it, but not the full bill. But this was filmed in Lake Sherwood, which is ways away. That's in Ventura County. Holy shit. That's on the far. Holy shit. So yeah, they work with they get the set. They reuse sets from Deep Space Nine and Voyager. They use the same cinematographer, and
Yeah, but that worked okay because no one saw Voyager.
yeah, I'm with you there. And
I watched a few. I watched some of it, but
yeah, if there wasn't any Borg episodes, I mean, come on, 7 of 9's better used on Picard than she was on Voyager.
it's true. But at least Janeway was willing to kick some ass if she had to, though. I'll give her that.
I'm pretty much it. It's just you had to get for so many just random episodes. Oh, let's have the Doctor sing and just bullshit in the hologram room. I'm like, so we have a syndication deal. I'm like, so you're going by Next Generation or Deep Space Nine earlier seasons? It's like, no, bad idea.
Yeah, seasons 1 to 3 of the DS9 or DS9, perfect.
Yeah, so I mean, this gets Brent Spiner's expressed dissatisfaction with this. Patrick Stewart was already kind of not liking the initial story, but kind of went silent on it when it got revised.
It's odd because it's Michael Piller wrote this one.
Yeah, and everyone was close to Piller. So I think Berman comes out with it once again. Ronald D. Moore and Braga take a stab at it. Believe it or not, Ira Steven Behr, the Deep Space Nine showrunner, reviews it. They were supposed to have more for Picard. He gets a love interest in this. He falls in love with a village girl who's played by the very underrated Donna Murphy, who's done a lot of stage acting and theatrical acting and voiceovers. And you do kind of feel like the romance there kind of plays it safe. And so it's like, well, I wouldn't mind, Picard shagging for half the movie. That'd be okay.
I'm going to go on a little bit of a limb or tangent on it too, and say that I think in retrospect it was a product of the time it was made, because the late 90s, early 2000s was when like the quote unquote, like I almost want to say renaissance of like, oh, everything should be holistic and natural, and was kind of swinging into high gear, and this movie kind of followed that concept.
Yeah, you look at the trailer, it's awful. Like it's trying to be like all the summer movies. You have Data taking, the gun and loading it like a shotgun, saying lock and load. It's like, no. You see it in the movie, it's harmless. It's actually kind of a funny scene because you don't expect to hear that from him, and it's more silent. But you're hearing again. A trailer can fuck with a movie, and so here you're seeing it, and they might as well have put Coolio or Van Halen music over it. It would have been shit.
I'd be all right with that.
No. Well, that would have been more entertaining.
Like or maybe Sabotage by the Beastie Boys.
There you go. That Sabotage would be better there.
Yeah, but it works. My thing is the plot about the medicinal radiation, and that's very new age kind of like a new age kind of thing, and it was very popular if I remember correctly, as old as I am, in the late 90s or to early to mid 2000s, and now again. I mean, it goes in phases. So
pretty much,
I think the plot somewhat suffered from, like, when you watch it now, you're like, well, this is kind of corny. First off, good radiation doesn't exist.
Yeah, they kind of go ape shit with the science.
I know.
It's not infamous in a Highlander 2 or even Star Trek 5 kind of way, but I know what you mean. Whereas, like, okay, yeah, don't show this to your scientist friend because then they won't shut up the rest of the movie, So I mean,
they'll have an aneurysm and not be able to get back up.
Yeah, Michael Westmore, who's best known for his nominated and award-winning work on Mask with Cher, as well as 2010 Theory of Made Contact. I'm gonna say he does pretty good with the makeup here, but like you say, I feel like the rest of the actors, because he does it in such a weird way, and I get why they're going that way. It just could have been better. It just kind of feels like F. Murray Abraham's doing most of the heavy lifting here. Now he's a good actor. Now I'm not going to go into a dick measuring contest and say if he's better than all the other track actors combined, but I feel like he earns his keep, and he's part of the track family. It's even funnier because have you seen any of Orville?
Yeah, I've seen the first season and a half. I gotta finish watching it because I really actually.
You're in for a treat.
Oh,
because
okay.
In season 2, they do a very good original storyline on the right to give birth and love whoever you love, and in this alien race, basically, homophobia is acceptable. And they had Jonathan Frakes direct the episode. They had Marina Sirtis, Troy,
Well, that's the
cameo,
second episode he directed then.
or something like that.
He directed a season 1 episode where they find a giant spaceship that's an Ark.
Pretty much.
I think he directed that one too.
I think so. They've been having John Cassaro, 24, and a bunch of other Seth MacFarlane guys, even Brandon Braga of Track fame, direct a lot of episodes, and John Favreau being executive consultant. But in this one, they, like you say, they kind of always give the what the fuck, that's brilliant episodes to Frank Stahelm. And in this one, he went all out. Like, he got the same cinematographer of Next Generation, who had shot all the other Track shows, to film these episodes. And he even made jokes about how they were filming it on an apple cart, which is not an uncommon thing, believe it or not, in the film world. And it's pretty much a Star Trek 6 or Next Generation level, courtroom, because it's an intense trial. And they have the opposing alien lawyer played by Tony Todd, and Worf's brother, in hard sci-fi makeup, and then they have F. Murray Abraham as like the referee of the court or something, and also in makeup. So I'm like, damn, they got like 6 different Track talents for one damn episode. And it's an epic one, and it's kind of cool seeing that kind of there, because F. Murray kind of does stuff more sparse. He doesn't have to work. He doesn't do everything like Anthony Hopkins, but he will just kind of appear out of nowhere and be like, whoa, he's in this. And
yeah, I gotta say, I get into an argument with one of my buddies all the time, another podcaster, because I truly enjoy the Orville. What I like about the Orville is it's more Trek-like to me than new Trek shows. That's not saying the new Trek shows are bad. It's just, and people that have issues with how they talk or swearing or whatever, I'm like, you clearly never met people from the Navy.
There's that, and I mean,
you hear Navy stories about what happens on the bridge and stuff in like just regular times. The Orville is much more real than that aspect to me.
Well, that, and I mean, it's also kind of
it's fun.
It's fun, and it's kind of catering to the same audience who watch stuff like Stargate, or even what's the other one, Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest.
Where you don't have to be familiar with Trek to get the Trek canon, and at the same time, like, it is kind of more action packed than even all of Trek combined, and it's even more outrageous. It's like, wow, okay.
I think the effects are pretty good.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, it
some
looks
people are complaining,
feels good, and I don't know.
Yeah, some people are complaining about how the robots in the space shuttle were, but I don't know. I think they're just gasping at straws because I mean, have you seen some of today's superhero movies? Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, those all already as a whole kind of vary and are not going to look as good a few years from now. This movie, Insurrection, was nominated at the Saturn Awards. I mean, the last film already got like 3 Saturn Awards after getting a Hugo nomination or something like that. Yeah. And this prize is for Best Science Fiction Film at the 25th Saturn Awards in '98, and it's shared by Armageddon and Dark City. Holy shit.
Armageddon? Really? Wow.
Yeah, Dark City. Yeah, so everybody likes every kind of sci-fi.
Yes, so.
This was nominated for the Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation, but that goes to the less sci-fi and more dramatic Truman Show, which I also really like, but I
liked it too, and man, so many people hate on that one.
I have noticed that a lot lately. It's like,
it's a fantastic show. I
call it the Forrest Gump effect, where everybody has to hate something that was dramatically rewarding back then, but they think is dog shit now.
Yeah, without watching it again, or even watching it then.
That, or I don't know, they just have a low tolerance for any kind of melodrama. I'm like, come on, this is not Gone with the Wind. I can understand.
Yeah, and since movie studios and TV studios are almost doing that exact thing now.
Yeah. Everything's got to be like Twilight or be based on a Nicholas Sparks novel. I'm like, no, thank you.
In the Truman Show, when that light falls and he catches on to what's going on, oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and Peter Weir. I mean, this guy did Witness and Master and Commander. He is not a shabby filmmaker. He knows the first rule of any movie is get an emotional response and don't preach it, earn it. And
the emotional response was something Insurrection got in multiple ways, not always good.
Pretty much.
See, I was trying to bring it back there, but I didn't do a good job. Sorry about that.
No, I know what you mean. So on the plus side, story doesn't feel half-assed, but it doesn't feel entirely complete. A lot of people complain about the, well, for lack of a better word, that it just feels like an extended episode. I think this is a pretty awesome 2-part episode. Personally, I mean, I don't feel like it's so limited enough like the other track movies to where I gotta be a fan. I gotta know everything.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because I mean, unlike the upcoming movie we're about to review, it doesn't take forever with a stupid wedding or try to cater to some other kind of appeal with
And it doesn't have any specific alien bad guys that you wouldn't that you'd need to know the lore of.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a very
like
it's very much more accessible for a non-Trek fan.
Absolutely, and I mean, the action does deliver, but it does take a while to build up. I will say, Michael Welch, even for a kid actor, probably isn't the best, but he doesn't annoy either.
No, yeah, he was serviceable. I mean, he did the job.
Yeah, years before he's in Twilight. I mean, he actually received a Youth in Film Award for this movie, so good for him.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, probably the second best of the Next Generation movies.
I will totally concur with you there. I mean,
of which there's only 4, but still.
Unpopular opinion, I would even say this is one of the best action sci-fi movies of the year.
Of '98?
Yeah, unpopular opinion.
I don't know what. Well, I mean, look, you had Armageddon and
we had Dark City. We had.
I don't think I saw Dark City, but
we saw Deep Impact.
Oh God, what a piece of shit that was.
That's fine.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. No, well, I mean, that's the other thing. We were already, worn out from giant aliens invading us. So, I mean, it's a good year for sci-fi and horror. I mean, we get Deep Rising, which you either like or hate, and then we get
that one was
Treat Williams, Stephen Sommers, Fam Jensen. Yeah, it's another alien diehard clone.
Like I can't believe when we talk about the next movie, I can't believe what came out that year that was out.
And I'll hit on that more. This is where I go back to ripping Rick Berman a new one because he has no shame about that and he should. But no, this movie makes
those were the least of the problems.
Oh, trust me, he was running the show, but I mean,
I know
it overall connects to the problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it didn't help.
So Brent Spiner doesn't like Insurrection, and Jonathan Frakes stands by. He's like, it's a good kick-ass action movie. He has no shame about making this.
It's not bad. His direction was good. I mean, the acting was good. The effects were good. It just to me the plot was a little, like I said, it was very Medicine Man-ish or very
Seven Samurai.
Yeah, I was thinking of it like Last of the Mohicans, but that's basically Seven Samurai. I mean, any of those
better than Avatar.
I know we always tangent when we do this, but what the hell? So when Avatar came out, I wasn't very excited to see it, right? Yeah. But everyone's telling me you got to see it, you got to see it, you got to see it. So I waited for the hype to die down, and I watched it, and I was like, okay, it looks like I'm playing Halo because the color scheme looked very much like Halo 3 to me. I'm like, and it's just Last of the Mohicans or any other movie like Seven Samurai. And everyone goes, did you watch it in 3D? I go, does the 3D fix the goddamn plot?
Pretty much.
They're like, well, no. I'm like, well, then guess what? Because and it just had so many tropes. Like Michelle Rodriguez is in that craft. And listen, if someone's gonna blow me away, I'm yelling ramming speed and flooring it right into them.
That's just it.
Sit there and let them do it. It's just.
That, and I mean, no one's developed, so I don't care. I don't care about anyone. And
now he wants to make 2 or 3 sequels of it. I'm like,
yeah. I mean,
make another Abyss movie. Like
that'd be fine. Hell, dude, True Lies 2. Like I've been asking since ever. So yeah, I mean, this you care about the villagers in this. They're not whiny, and they don't feel like they're in a different movie like the crazy people, the Mad Max looking Highlander guys in Part 5, the infamous. Yeah, they're never that crazy. They don't feel like they're trying to be cute like George Lucas did with the Ewoks and Jar Jar Binks. Even though it's PG rated, I'm surprised at what stuff slips by. They have a bit of utter mildly strong language briefly when Picard's talking to the evil high-ranking official of Starfleet who betrayed them all.
Yeah.
And I mean, hell, Troy and Riker are in the bathtub, clearly naked, So it's like, okay, so it's another mature PG rated movie. So it's like, okay, so this is cool. This is the same awesome movie that came out the same year as Blade and The Truman Show. So 98's a good year for blockbusters and,
Blade, the movie that saved Marvel.
Yeah. And God, I mean, don't get me wrong. I like who they're casting now as Blade, but at the same time, I'm just like, again, I mean, stop trying to make everything be one big franchise. And at the same time, that's how I am with DC's. Try it. Why did it take you so long to just get it down? But even then, they still don't completely have it down. So that's another discussion.
But realistically, after 40 years of DC movies, Batman was always the only one that was like consistently good. There's like one bad Batman movie, but like Superman 3, 4, I mean, those are horrible. I mean,
yeah, and that's just it. They relied so much on just high-ranking people.
DC was always good with TV, and to this
that's
day,
just the only
TV.
Well, that's just it.
They're still good with it.
Yeah, that's just the only way you can.
I think their stories generally just work better in a series than they do as feature-length movies. But I don't think they want to admit that. Like I still think Trek works better on TV than on film.
I agree. I mean, either that, they should have just made a lot of TV movies like they did with Babylon 5. You know, just 2 hours of airtime. That's all you need.
Another show I really like too. I haven't watched it in forever.
Hell, if you want to rewatch it and do a whole episode over the movies, I got a few other B5 fans who'd love to talk your ear off on that one.
That'd be fantastic. But anyways, back to Insurrection.
Yeah. So I mean, this is kind of a Babylon 5 classic track story, but done for a mainstream audience. They used a lot of locations that they used also. They used Paramount's B tank, which had been used for the finale of Star Trek 4. You know, to have the water type scene. So that was used to represent San Francisco Bay. They used a lot of other just CGI, practical, and good effects. They're not dated at all, even with the, you know, green screen behind them.
No, I think it looks pretty solid still. Yeah.
And like you say, it just takes a while to just kind of get into it because it's a what the fuck, what's going on? Data's going apeshit, beating everyone up. What the hell?
Yeah, but then the overall plot, you're like, so they're just trying to like save this, like they're trying to get this medicine. Well, I don't get it.
According to Franks, half the time shooting was spent on filming.
I can see that.
Or was spent on the location. So
I can see that.
Yeah, they even used Janeway's quarters to be Picard's. The Voyager briefing room was Riker's quarters. So yeah, they. I like Anthony Zerbe in this. He's always been an underrated character actor who not many people seem to know as much. I mean, he's the Omega Man. You know, Matrix sequels. One of the
I Am Legend.
There you go. Like the original one, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. It was the Omega. He was an Omega Man, which is based on I Am Legend. I'm sorry, my bad.
No, it's all good. He's in Kiss Meets the Fan of the Park. Yeah, he's been in everything. He's been Farewell, My Lovely, License to Kill, the James Bond movie, and just always a good guy at just brooding. You don't know if he's good or evil, and so that's why I think he works there. And I like how it's again a callback to other classic Next Generation Deep Space Nine episodes where there's a mutiny, or even Undiscovered Country. There's something bad here. They want him to abandon the planet. They're like, wait a second,
that's not right.
It's supposed to save people, and this guy's using it as a bank. He wants to enslave everyone and tell them. He's pretty much pulling the Donald Trump. He's like, get the fuck out of here. I'll build a wall over you.
You're fired.
Yeah, into space. I like the new uniforms, how they're looking exactly like Cisco and the Deep Space Nine crew. I like that. And
the continuity was good throughout all the movies. To be fair, well, all the Next Generation movies, the continuity on with the shows that were still running,
pretty much.
So I appreciate that because it all does take place in the same universe and at the same time. Well, I guess by the time you get to Nemesis and Insurrection, the movies are maybe a little ahead of the shows that were out at the time.
I agree.
But not too far.
Pretty much during its first week, it was the highest grossing film, exceeding the takings of Enemy of the State, which was out the same year, which another good movie.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that one.
Rick Berman said he wanted to release the next film 3 years after, referencing 2001: A Space Odyssey because he thought he was so clever. Okay.
And he blew it.
Yeah, that it came out a year later after that. So a lot of critics hated this.
A lot of fans don't like it.
I know. I'll get to that. I'll just sum it up real fast. The Independent. I'm not going to read the Daily Mail because that's not a paper. The Los Angeles Daily News says that bare bones of the pseudo philosophical allegories that they done so entertainingly, and the movie blows it. Praises the direction and effects, gives it 2.5. Daily Herald gives it 2.5, describing it as a slickly made movie with a plot scaled down to TV roots, and criticized the romance between Riker and Troy. I thought that was a highlight, but maybe that's
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one.
Washington Times gives a 1.5, saying that it's consistently flat-footed and slow on the uptake, and that there was ramshackle confusion. Really? During the climatic scenes? I mean, there's some quick editing.
Somebody had a thesaurus on their desk and wanted to use big words.
Pretty much. He wanted to just
confusion. Who the hell talks like that?
However, here's some contrary stuff. The Daily Mirror. Simon Rose, British journalist, says he's critical of the movie and failed to break the odd number curse, and that it was feeble, moribund, and tedious. Yeah, he's definitely going to the thesaurus. Josh Spiegel, however, for the Buffalo News, says that it breaks the odd number rule. Birmingham Evening Mail says that it's Teletubbies for babies. Lots of repetition. Yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah, that's a little
Let's go to some positive here. The Daily Record praises F. Murray and describes Anthony Zerbe as ever dependable, and says that.
We're still on Insurrection. Never mind. I thought you moved on to Nemesis. I'm like,
not yet.
That.
Well, we'll get there. Yeah. He says that the plot's good, but it's basically an extended episode. Gives a 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
And the British paper. So yeah, everybody's just too distracted by it. Feels like an extended episode. So I don't know how big they were versus a fan versus being less subjective and more about does it work as a movie. I'd say it works
and that's why I don't take most critics' opinions not seriously, but I don't take them into account most times, because it's different when you're watching something as a fan versus when you are like a theater critic that, there's like sci-fi, right? Sci-fi never gets the credit where credit's due, no matter how good it is by critics.
Yeah, and everyone likes to act like,
or even like a comic book movie. Like, let's be honest, Iron Man was a damn good movie, comic book movie or not. It was a really good movie.
It was
accessible. But because it's Iron Man, people are like, oh, it's a fucking kids movie.
There's that.
I mean, the movie for what it is. Downey Jr. was fantastic in it.
They're doing it with the filmmakers clearly too. They're acting like, oh, it's not the same as now that someone left. I'm like, if you were even paying attention to that, does it really matter? I mean,
or like the directors that have come out, the big names from the past that don't do anything but make mafia movies.
Oh, there you go. I mean, I can say,
oh, hey, you made another 3-hour-long epic about the mafia. Let me guess, kid wants to be in the mafia. Kid gets in the mafia. Kid, something bad happens.
Yeah, I love you, Scorsese. Please stop ripping off your own stuff.
Try something original,
Yeah.
Or
I had to force myself to finish that movie, and my mom's like, "Are you even enjoying this?" I'm like, "I have to just watch this just to say I watched it."
You're the only person I could say that with. Well, we'll find out about the listeners.
Oh no, I'm here with you.
Because like I have other friends that like, oh, Scorsese's a genius, and I go, oh yeah, run down his IMDb list and see how many movies were on there that are really that good. Because
I agree.
Movies in like 6 are.
Yeah, a lot of my friends who don't like many movies were just impressed by it. I'm like, nothing happened in that movie. I'm sorry that I liked Pacino as Jimmy Hoffa. That's it.
Sure.
And everyone's like, oh, you're so spoiled. And some people were even going full blown mafia, threatening me. And it's like, you'll slick with the fishes if you talk shit about this movie. I'm like, what is this? The Sopranos? Come on.
It's not even that. It wasn't Goodfellas. It wasn't The Godfather.
I literally didn't want to spend a moment with any of these guys. Yeah. Again, Casino, Taxi Driver, even Mean Streets. I rewatched Mean Streets. That movie holds way more. And because it's got slick editing, dialogue, everything. So I'm pretty much in agreement. I mean, so Scorsese's been getting repetitive lately, and I feel that's pretty much where Rick Berman went wrong. And I mean, with Lucas, he had this big Bible in his mind, and he just kept playing Russian roulette with who was going to helm it before he said, fuck it, I'll do it. And here Rick Berman pretty much just says, I don't want anyone else to ruin it, so let me ruin it. But he's not, he doesn't think he's ruining it. I mean,
right.
So this brings me to my next part. I mean, so he, Insurrection, really, everyone's acting like the better stuff was left on the cutting room floor. That is not true. You look at the deleted scenes for like the original ending for how the villain died. The animation is already unfinished, but it just doesn't look impressive at all. So I like how it was just everyone jokes about how Patrick Stewart as Picard pretty much goes full blown Bruce Willis. He's climbing up shafts and taking out henchmen and leaves everything up. I think that's what's cool about it. I like how he's all muscular, and I like how everyone gets injured along the way. So it's just simple obstacles. It's like, oh, we're trapped in a cave. Oh, we're being attacked by drones. Which, by the way, the animation for that was done by Blue Sky Studios. Who later went on to do animation for Fox.
Oh, nice.
Ice Age. This is where they got their start doing visual effects before becoming an animation company. And again, the earlier story drafts, they weren't liked initially, and Brent Spiner still seems bitter about it. I think he's just mad because he wasn't that well used there. I thought he was well used at first, but like you say, the story doesn't make the most of it. But no, I mean, considering that the script survived being leaked and got retooled enough, the studio liked the new ending even, but they wanted a bigger space battle. So it seemed like everybody was at odds, and I think they did the best with what they had. That again, this is where everyone's getting spoiled by money and how much it's going to cost, and it's just like, let the wizards do their magic. You will get your money back.
Yeah.
Shit.
Leave the filmmaking to the filmmakers, not the stockholders.
And believe it or not, Michael Piller came up with the story for this, and Pocket Books was gonna. I mean, there's already a book that talks about the making of it with pictures and everything, but he was gonna write another making of book and hire his typists and research assistants, and it went unpublished because apparently Paramount Pictures suppressed it, so that caused a lot of other divide with the critics of the film. And I mean, however, it did get leaked onto the internet in 2005, and I've read some of it. It's not bad, but other people are like, oh, I like this version better than the original thing. It's like, you just can't please anyone. But it's still so annoying.
To be fair, that's how I feel about the Alien 3 script that William Gibson wrote. I like that one way better than the other one.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I like Greg Henry here as the Sona henchman who kind of has a change of heart and gets told by Worf and Picard, hey, this guy is fucking killing people. And it pretty much convinces him to be, hey, act like a man. So it's cool how he was, Greg Henry, a favorite of Brian De Palma, was appearing in a few mainstream movies like this and Payback with Mel Gibson back to back. And then,
that's a great movie.
Oh yeah, and then later went on to do some brief recurring roles on, other, as well as guest spots on countless other shows, 24, White Collar, and I always thought he'd be perfect on Breaking Bad.
Yeah, he would have been. Yeah,
he was on the HBO show Hung as one of the, I know, silly show as one of the coaches, but it's kind of a shame that everyone just. I don't think he looks that bad, and I'm not one to just judge anyone on their looks. I mean, it just sucks how so many actors do end up letting themselves go or have problems like all the rest of us guys do. So as a result, I mean, they get cast in roles that are way beneath them because everyone's just judging it on looks. Oh, you're not. What's their sexy name? So I feel like this keeps the Trek franchise active, but at the same time, no one's prepared for what's around the corner. Everyone's just run out of time, trying too hard to keep it relevant instead of earn its relevance, so to speak.
Right. Well, they lost track of they lost it lost its way.
Well, they didn't even need to have they could have had most of their crew come here and work on this instead of doing Voyager. But Berman he was pretty much told by Paramount, if you don't come up with one, then we will. It's like, then that's where you say fuck you, or just walk away. Who knows? Maybe they'll do something also good that you didn't happen to work on.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Yeah, you don't know.
That's true. Know. Discovery is already dividing its fan base, but maybe back then it wouldn't have been so bad. I don't know. I really don't. Especially considering how Viacom got into this whole war with how the Paramount television and movie, division were completely separate. And I mean, as a result, that's why it's been so tricky with Trek. I mean,
yeah.
But they pretty much realized that it brought their franchises back to life for film in the 80s and 90s, and as a result, they're like, the minute streaming came aboard, they're like, we have to embrace streaming because this is the only card we got. We're fucking over Indiana Jones, and Terminator isn't becoming a franchise, and we've tried buying the rights to Triple X and Transformers and every other big franchise, and it's still not panning out. So we're gonna, until we get off our asses and stop just taking 50% from every other, Disney movie, we don't have anything. Berman goes on to say here in an 2006 interview when he talks about not returning to the Trek franchise after Enterprise was canceled in 2005 after a 4th season. He says, without sounding cliche, this is from trackweb.com. It's since been deleted, but is sourced here in the interwebs Wayback Machine. He says, without sounding cliche, I'm not going to say never, but I assume that I have produced my last Star Trek, especially with the interest that Paramount has gone from J.J. Abrams to do another movie, which is if successful, could lead to other TV shows. This is why I don't like this asshole. I've seen him in all the other History Channel documentaries talking about the history of Trek. Yeah. He's just very generic when he just comes to talk about it and how he's just so proud. And that's literally all he'll say. I think it's a very good movie.
To be fair, he was actually, after Nemesis, he was working with Eric Jenderson on a new movie called The Beginning.
Right.
Which I think would have been kind of a nice concept because it was before the original series, but after Enterprise.
I'm glad you touched up on that because I read it, but I didn't go into full detail. Eric was part of the award-winning, Band of Brothers thing, and I remember hearing about that project for years. And I was like, I think around circa 2007, I heard about it. I'm like, when is Trek coming back? And so, yeah, you have this 4 year in between before we get.
Yeah, but now it's funny because Abrams, I don't recall, but I thought Berman hadn't quite been kicked out yet.
He pretty much
Abrams was being discussed.
I think so. I think he was,
and I think when Abrams came on board, they kicked him, or right before.
Yeah, this report, which was originally on Sci-Fi Pulse, does cite that Berman was still very much involved in other Paramount productions, so he was definitely overseeing it, and it was getting stuck in development hell, so they just took it away from him. But
Paramount was part of that
problem.
Too.
Yeah, that's just it. They didn't understand the success they had, and they'd always been an arrogant studio, going for so many owners and other divisions, and so Berman goes on to say it's not an easy task. I agree with that, but then maintains his office at the lot by saying, on the other hand, I have nothing to be ashamed about. We created 624 hours of TV and 4 feature films, and I think we did one hell of a job. I'm amazed that we managed to get 18 years of the kind of work that everyone involved managed to contribute to, and it's certainly more than anyone could have asked for.
Well, that part I don't like him saying, though.
It
was a long stretch. I mean, but he seemed to take most of the credit himself.
Well, that's just exactly where I go back to it, because I mean, in the 50-year journey book, Terry Farrell has a lot of stuff to say about how he was pretty sexist, which makes sense. Why in later years we get to Paul on Enterprise, and 7 and 9 is the eye candy, and then they talked about how the other writers talked about him. Braga pretty much felt overwhelmed. He couldn't say no, but he was the only guy who was going to get the offer. So and Ira Stephen Burr has pretty much talked endlessly on how he was the only guy who won any argument with Rick Berman, who overrode him, saying, "We are not Roddenberry's Trek anymore. We are Deep Space Nine. We can't be wagon train or Gunsmoke every day. We are a Western in space, so we got to go to other colonies, other battles." So,
right.
And pretty much everybody was being dwelled into a corner and given nothing to do. Well, they were giving something to do, but they weren't. They were being very limited, and
I also think part of it was just fatigue.
It is very much fatigue, and that's my other issue. He does not acknowledge that at all.
I mean, you had 3 concurrent shows and movies all at the same time.
I don't understand. Right, it's just too much, and to him, that's his baby. That's all he knows, and all he thinks about. I'm like, well, you already had people who weren't going to give it a chance because they were obsessed with old school Trek, and having too much of it, not all of us have this much free time where they didn't syndicate it that well until, again, the first 2 shows that he did, TNG and Deep Space Nine, were syndicated everywhere, but Voyager was exclusive to only people who, were looking at UPN and getting a signal. So, even without looking at it, he had a lot of competition in 2002 alone. There's visual effect breakthroughs, and he doesn't understand the hated guy. We'll focus on the pros. Here's the other thing. Well, actually, this is not a pro. Acts like he discovered Tom Hardy, who's the villain in Star Trek Nemesis, the final Next Generation movie. He's like, no, you didn't. Your casting director did, and you happen to like him. No
So
one
what-
knew. I didn't think anything of him in this movie. I mean,
So what's
I
funny
know
about
some people like him, and I know some people hate him. I don't think his character was. I thought his character was interesting, but it wasn't well defined. But he acted like, oh, I made Hardy a star. I'm like, no, you didn't. Hardy
Actually-
didn't get anything for quite a while until
Yeah.
Nolan started using him.
So what's funny about Tom
And,
Hardy
he
is
takes
that
the claim for the script, which was conceived by Brent Spiner, the Data portrayer, as well as John Logan of Gladiator fame.
right? Were you there? Hello?
This is pretty much Brent Spiner's excuse to go all Spock and Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
On the other points. So, I mean, they come up with a final story draft by Brent Spiner. He wants to pretty much make Data be like the next Spock, where he discovers himself and then sacrifices himself when the crew gets into an unstoppable villain, which happens to be a clone of Picard.
Which looks nothing like Picard.
Yeah. And Berman is just very angry about acting like, I don't understand it. I don't get why this wasn't a hit. Because he'd hired Stuart Baird, who, has edited so many of the James Bond movies, as well as Die Hard 2 and various Joel Silver and other Warner Brothers movies, nominated for an Oscar on Gorillas in the Mist, supervised editing on other movies like Lethal Weapon 2 and Prince of Thieves, Robin Hood, and was also heavily worked on Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, and had previously directed other movies like, Executive Decision and U.S. Marshals. So, decent action fair guy.
Yeah.
Jonathan Frakes, the entire crew roasts him, especially because LeVar Burton, who plays Geordi, was supposed to direct this. And he's like, it's my turn. What happened to me? I didn't even get called upon. Marina Sirtis, who plays Troy, said that Stuart Baird was a fucking idiot. Baird talks in various interviews, and it's been well noted that Patrick Stewart was unimpressed with him because he didn't know what he was doing. He was unfamiliar with Star Trek. And that's pretty much it. I mean, Jonathan Frakes even offers to give him advice. He's like, hey, I was in the same boat as you. And Stuart Baird just flat out just ignores him. He's not trying to be rude. He's just a workman. He's used to working with very demanding people like Joel Silver. I mean, that's a no-brainer. But this whole thing is just doomed from beginning to end, because even if you don't want to get into the technical specifics, they got completely different visual effects companies.
Yep.
And you watch the entire movie. It's another one I can't watch, especially with commercials. And each time it comes on Sci-Fi Channel or AMC, it's just because it's such a fucking long movie.
And it was trying to be Undiscovered Country with the kind of plot it had.
Yeah.
But it just failed across the board at it.
We open up with a whole giant ass Romulan massacre. Everyone's poisoned and disintegrates, but you don't know what it has to do with anything. And it has not, at least on Discovered Country, we at least have, suspense and time with the characters, because it just shows you Berman has his head up his own ass, because this is released in December of 2002 in direct competition with Harry Potter 2, Lord of the Rings 2, and the final Pierce Brosnan James Bond movie. I was already overwhelmed that year from, just every other blockbuster, every other stylish adventure movie. We had The Count of Monte Cristo, we had Star Wars prequels, and then we had other stuff, everyone's getting ready for Matrix and other horror movies.
And a big part of it at this point, I think, was, we
have a lot of good, but we have a lot of bad too. You can name a top 10 from 2002 in particular, no problem. It's just we are embracing all the technology, all the changes in movie, overtures, all the big, Oscar-winning movies, Oscar bait movies like The Pianist and The Hours. So we've had a huge year. So I don't know, Berman, have you watched any movies lately? Because it was a big year. There was I was already familiar watching parts of Next Generation, on Spike TV every once in a while, back when it was called that, or back when it was called TNN.
Yeah,
before it became the Paramount Network. So yeah, everyone's tracked out, and we're not paying attention to it. And so as a result, he flat out just keeps going in interviews. I don't understand, especially the 50-year-old journey. I don't know why it wasn't a success. It's like, you just picked a bad time. Everyone was worn out. You could have literally just left it on Insurrection. It would have been a track trilogy, Next Generation movie trilogy. That'd been way better.
Yeah, but where would Paramount have got their funding from then?
There you go. And
because I mean, Paramount for 20 years
it
lived
definitely
off
feels
Star
like
Trek.
it's very much so. And even this is out the same, very much like Enterprise and even Abrams films. It definitely feels like this is trying to go rival Star Wars and be too much like Star Wars. But it's also catering to the stylish, MTV Matrix crowd, because constantly there is slow motion in this movie, and it kills an otherwise solid, action display. It's like, why? What? I don't need to see people falling in slow motion. It looks very out of place. And when Stuart Baird is both editing and directing this movie, it's like, dude. So they're off to a bad start. They got a script by John Logan, who did a very, I mean, let's be honest, Gladiator works because of the style in which it's told, not because of the dialogue. Right. So, and Ridley Scott's never been great at that anyway. He's like Michael Mann, where again, he's all about how you shoot it, how you show it. So we're not off to a good start. We're off with a guy who's not as deep as everyone likes to think he is. And then we got a guy who's not at all, doesn't know hocus pocus about track. So it makes you wish they could have just gone all campy and had it been a stupid comedy. And I feel sorry for Brent Spiner, because then he wasn't really in that many movies. He'd already been in the either you like it or hate it, or maybe so bad it's good, comedy as the villain in The Master of Disguise. So to have him have 2 lesser quality movies in 1 year, that can't be nice for him. He's still proud of it and will defend it to the death, but he's getting way too caught up in the character. It's like, guess what? We don't have a problem with Data. We have a problem with the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it just wasn't. It just wasn't.
I look at the visual.
It was like overly ambitious, and it just didn't reach what it was reaching for. Yeah.
Yeah. I was the one keeping up with all these, reminding, my folks and uncle were mainly keeping up with all just the various movies. And I mean, they weren't keeping up with the movies, they were keeping up with the shows and just gave up after a while. Yeah. But knew about it in pop culture. And I was pretty much just, each time we went to the video store, I was going to just, random movie info sites saying, this is the next one. This is the next one we got to rent. And this looked very engaging. The trailers had me sold. The TV ads kept saying, now, buy it on DVD, because DVD was a big thing. There are lots of engaging special effects. And each time you watch the special features detailing it, it's way more impressive than what you see on screen. I mean, they are so obsessed with the fact that we're having an actual crew member, fall through into outer space, from a spaceship crash. And I'm like, but it's not relevant to anything that's going on. Now, if it makes you feel any happier, one of those, actually, no, he's not the Doom crewman, but he has a cameo. Bryan Singer is in this movie. Yes, the infamous director Bryan Singer, before everyone knew that he was a pedophile. Has a brief, he's credited as Kelly uncredited in IMDb, but everyone on the Wikipedia pages jokes he's not even called that in the movie. So it was just a cameo that he was stopping by because, he knew Patrick from X-Men. And God, so
the other thing with this one to me was that
it's ego-headed.
Yeah,
it's too in love with itself. I'm like, well, make us fall in love with you. I can watch it as a music video. That's what's so weird. Patrick as Picard, he's way deadly here. He actually kicks so much ass for like 5 minutes. But I'm like, why couldn't that have been the whole movie? Why do we have to have all this overdrawn? Because it's not suspense. Well, it's trying to build suspense, but because it's taking so much time, I would not be surprised if someone else took over this and diddled around with it. Because, I mean, Stuart Baird doesn't talk about it much, except for the special features. Well, yeah, he didn't like working on it, but
I mean, the Sheltering Sky moves faster than this movie.
The Deer Hunter is faster than this movie, and I like that one. I just resaw it recently, but boy, howdy, I will never see it again because it's just so fucking morbid. Oh God!
Watch the 5-hour cut of Apocalypse Now. Oh, I didn't realize it was that long. 2 DVDs.
Yeah,
and that's how this movie felt.
Well, because Apocalypse Now, there's it's giving equal attention to every department. Every shot matters.
Yeah.
And so when people say a movie was a crapshoot, and they say that's why it sucked, I'm like, no, that's not why it sucked. because an editor can do magic if you got something to work with, or if you decide, hey, I want a narration instead of just a scene that's unfinished and doesn't have good acting. Perfect. Let's have someone else narrate. So
that's what Nemesis needed. Was more.
This needed more cocaine and shooting.
Yeah. More cocaine. So it needed Michael Mann. Right? Wasn't he Miami Vice and Heat?
Early Michael Mann.
Yeah.
Before he embraces, hey, I got to shoot everything on a camcorder and make it look like a student film.
Well, yeah, true. It's funny because this movie I referenced on a podcast I used to do a few years back.
Oh,
because
the Star Wars guys.
Well, no, not even. It was we were talking about the Spawn.
Spawn.
No, not Spawn.
I was saying Spock.
Tom Hardy played what was it? Spider-Man's nemesis.
Venom.
Venom, and all the guys are like, oh, it's gonna be awesome. Tom Hardy's gonna play Venom. I go, it's gonna fucking suck.
Yeah,
it's not, dude. Tom Hardy doesn't make bad decisions when he comes to movies. I go, Star Trek Nemesis. For a second, they're like, and even they who aren't Trek fans knew that movie.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing too. I was seeing so many people watch this movie, who their parents were big sci-fi fans, and they were the kind of people they watched everything at the video store, and they were teenagers / young adults, so they had a different kind of acceptance of what a movie was. But again, they rented anything that was action, sci-fi, or horror at the video store. So of course, yeah, they saw this one, and I can see why some people who aren't Trek fans might like this movie. But then I see them giving interviews and other people reviewing it on today's shows, and they're like, I think you'll like it. It's really action-packed. You'll really like it if you're not a Trekkie. And I'm like, this is too much for hardcore Trekkies. And even they think it's not that good, because that wedding takes way longer than the one in the Deer Hunter. And it's not even that long, but it feels longer. You know what I mean? So, it goes on. They cut out so much stuff. I mean, Will Wheaton, you can still see him as Wesley in the background, but he had actual scenes. And Stephen Colt.
I would like to have seen him as an adult with a starship.
It's not a bad scene. It could have worked in the movie. I would have rather that as opposed to all this cringy, unfunny humor where they're all in their suits. It's not funny at all, and it's worse than when you watch a B-grade, direct-to-video made-for-TV movie or with a bunch of bad guys maniacally laughing. Because everybody's laughing in here, and they are, again, you're like, am I supposed to find that funny? I don't know what they're joking about or why that's funny, And Trek has always had a mix of camp, both intentional and non-intentional, and gentle and every sort of humor, So for it to just not engage on that for Generation X, and it's like, what's going on here? And
I think Star Trek to a point had just run its course. It had been on for so long.
It should have been a movie special. Just tried to bring it back, or I don't know, because they already had Enterprise on, so again, they're already overwhelmed writing for that. It's not doing so hot past the pilot.
They threatened to cancel it after I think the first or second season, and for Paramount to threaten to cancel a show based off their flagship stuff is pretty.
It doesn't even have Voyager numbers, and again, at that point, we're so tracked out, and I hated Enterprise growing up, but I'd watch it and be like, I don't know why I don't like this. I like other Trek. Why don't I like this? Now I've re-seen it all. I definitely like the first 3 episodes of season 1, and then it really only gets good in season 3 and 4. It's hardcore because of a different change up with the writing staff,
right?
And because finally they tell Berman, hey, they pull a full blown good Deep Space Nine on him and say, we're gonna serialize this. We're gonna have 3-parters. We're gonna hire other people who have written great Trek books, husband and wife teams, and they even tried to get Shatner to reprise his role, but that was stupid. That wasn't going to happen. And for this, I feel like this is where it would have been okay to just have a cameo by another person. It would have been okay to have Scotty or someone else's cameo, because it's like nothing else is working here. The least you could do is just have them show up again. And I can see why everyone just rakes this up there with Final Frontier as just one of the worst of the worst, because it's not organized at all. I can watch it, but again, like Generations at least has something going on. It's just not organized, and this this just always sinks to the bottom every time because I don't think Data's death is rushed, but it's again, it's derivative of Spock's death.
Yeah, it's very similar.
If anything, he should have died in unpopular opinion. He should have died in First Contact.
Yeah,
Sacrificed
I would agree with
himself.
you.
Because
it would have made more sense for him to die in a Borg movie.
There you go. And then they could have resurrected him in Insurrection or just not at all. That's what I was afraid Picard, the TV show, was going to do. Is like, no, he's dead. But there's someone connected to him who we have to find. So it does kind of stink how they have to use that movie as a template. I'm glad that they acknowledge every kind of track canon, but it is almost kind of like James Bond, where it's like when you come across that entry you don't like, that you wish they just wouldn't even talk about it.
Yeah.
Be neutral, just say, hey, brand new adventure, next, and yeah, like you say, the main issue is, I mean, there are some good actors in this. There's Alan Dell from, this is around the same time he's doing NCIS and 24.
Oh, I forgot he was on this. That's right.
Yeah, he was also on West Wing in 2 brief key episodes as, Speaker of the House. And speaking of West Wing, there's another West Wing connection here. Stephen Culp, who later plays the Starfleet Marine team leader on Enterprise, was, I think he had some other brief track role, but, well, no, that was his other track role, but he was supposed to be in Nemesis. He was supposed to play some other Starfleet official here to congratulate, Picard, and
oh wow,
they just totally delete his scene, and I'm like, well, it's more interesting than the damn wedding. You should have kept it in along with the. So
yeah, that was.
So this is the only one I agree with. You should have kept all the deleted stuff back in, because I mean, the Generations was just unfinished and when it had matched up with what we ultimately got, and First Contact, they never talk about the deleted scenes for that. I'm sure they just got it all right. Insurrection, again, the earlier stuff just wasn't clicking until they just kept it more simple and went all Kurosawa, Return of the Jedi. So this one, they could have actually just said, this is a movie where I hate to even use this phrasing. This is a movie where it's okay for the studio to actually lock the director out of the editing room.
Yeah, I think that would have been a wise choice, to be honest, also.
Could it have been worse? I mean, you could have even had, yeah. So they should have either given it, why couldn't it have been just a co-directing? I mean, Michael Dorn had directed some episodes. I mean,
yeah, LeVar Burton.
Yeah, you could have had LeVar and Patrick co-direct this movie, and have them even take a back seat. Just focus on just Data, just kicking ass the whole time, and the whole clone storyline just does not work. Everyone's like, whenever I see people praising or hating this movie, they always say, we like the Data stuff, we hate everything else. And I'm like, well, that's just it. Because
we made a clone that looks nothing like Picard. And doesn't act like Picard, is half his age.
And it's just so drawn out. And
we're using him to lure him. What?
Yeah, and the other actors playing the Romulans are good actors. Jude Cocoletta, who's later in as one of the bad guys. I think he's like the warden or something in Sin City. And Dina Meyer, yeah, Dizzy from Starship Troopers herself is also in there as the good Romulan who provides backup. It just gets old after a while, just having him go back and forth, meet with this guy who's clearly evil. Yeah, I mean, how does he at all look peaceful? He looks like a tyrant. He looks like he wants to bat your head off. And I mean, he has all this other stuff that's hinted at. I'm like, nothing is cool if it's just a cheap shock, if there's no buildup of it. And it tries to be suspenseful. And I mean, I even listened to the score for this a few years back. It was very boring. And that's not good when there's a track movie that's got a very uninspired track score.
And a score can really make or break a movie too.
Well, yeah, it doesn't break the movie, but I mean, just listen to itself.
Doesn't help though.
That's just it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just there, and I mean, it makes you just wish they had pulled a Superman 2 and just reused the score from the last movie, and and just keyed it up where the editor deemed appropriate, because sometimes that's better. But yeah, so I mean, Brent's fully invested in this movie, Logan's fully invested in this movie, and Berman thinks he's made a masterpiece. It's like that. Brent, I mean, he's earned it. He thought his career was dead the minute he left Night Court and signed up for this show. So
Brent was on Night Court?
yeah, that's where you got to start. He briefly, and he's so funny in interviews and convention appearances, so it makes sense why he just brought to this role. So I'm okay with him just taking credit. Like, he did come up with the story, but Berman is to blame. He's just over marketing it. He should have just hung it up and said, I don't care for this, or just again simplify it. Say, okay, just have another colony that they're investigating, and again, Data has a clone. Because I mean, it's so redundant when you got a clone of him and you got a clone of Picard. It's like, is this a greatest hits? Wrath of Khan would not work if you had two Khans fighting on the screen. That would not work. So
No.
it's like the worst alternate reality tracks blended in with a coherent plot that tries too hard to be long and suspenseful. And how long is this movie? This movie is.
I bet it's not as long as you think.
Holy shit! It's 116 minutes, but I swear it was like, well, if you watch it on TV, it's almost 2.5 to 3 hours. This was shot by Jeffrey L. Kimball, who's shot stuff for John Woo and Tony Scott.
You there?
Yeah, Mission Impossible 2, Wind Talkers, Hostage, Paycheck.
I mean, they had some of the. I mean, again, they had people with pedigrees, just not the right pedigrees.
Yeah, by this, well, everyone likes to downplay it. Its budget was $60 million. It only made $67.3 million. So that's just it. If you don't make twice that amount, you're considered a dub. The other issue,
even back then.
Yeah. And I forget, is what's her name? Yeah, Whoopi Goldberg makes a cameo as Guinan, but it's a very uninspired cameo. It's like, okay, she's back, but you're not doing anything with her, like she.
And she was always a character I thought needed to be explored more.
Yeah, they always took credit for saying it was stunt casting, but here's the thing: it was stunt casting that worked. Now, the only interesting, really behind the scenes stuff in terms of the casting, well, Tom Hardy thinks his performance here is appalling, but apparently Patrick Stewart didn't think he was all that good an actor back then with some other stuff I read. So, yeah, he had nothing good here, and he wasn't there as an actor. So, I'm not really that big a fan of him, but I mean, I'd say this is up there with his lesser role as Bane in Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, I know Hardy's done some good work here and there, but he generally has a stereotypical character he sticks to.
Yeah,
this character fell into that.
I would have rather
realm.
Statham or even Gerard Butler here, because at least they would have hammed it up. It couldn't have been worse than
I thought the character was very one-dimensional myself. Personally, to me, like the way
they considered Jude Law, that would have been way better.
Oh yeah, Jude Law would have been good in it.
I mean, he just has that look of someone who's an honest liar, or just hiding something from you. And
there's
like games.
That's a good point, because there's his look, which is like, okay, well, he might be hiding something, and then there's Benicio del Toro, who even in real life looks like he's up to no good.
Pretty much. And Troy went on to say that she was pleased with the wedding scene.
Yeah, it was that moment.
Or yeah, and that it was actually better than her actual wedding dress. I'm like, shit, that's saying something. But yeah, I don't like the scene where it goes all horror movie and it has Shinzon basically mind raping her, and I'm like, that felt so out of place for just any Trek. I mean, and Trek has had moments like that, even on Next Generation Enterprise, where basically, yeah, well, yeah, there's plenty of cringeworthy episodes, but it's not poorly made. It's just it's doing its job, which is making you feel uncomfortable. And here is just like, they're totally trying to appeal to all the cheesy PG-13 R-rated horror movie crowd. And I'm like, but it doesn't work.
It was trying to be. I think it was. Well, I said I think like 6 times about what I think about the movie.
That's
but
fine.
I think another thing it was trying to be was it was trying to be to everything to everyone. They were trying to put something in it for every type of movie fan.
Pretty much, it's too many cooks in the kitchen. Now, as an interesting side note, in the 50-year-old journey, Jonathan Frakes, Riker himself, notes how he met Ron Perlman on the set, who he had not seen for almost a decade ago, back when they were stage actors.
Oh, so wow!
It was cool meeting them again. Everyone forgets that Ron Perlman's in here. I always kind of remembered him.
I kind of remember him, but I forgot what he played.
Yeah, he's the Riemann Viceroy. The Riemanns are these like other Romulan, guys, but that's just it. Because you don't recognize him on the makeup, but the voice kind of gives it away, and then you see him featured heavily in the special features, and that's where I was watching it, and my mom's like, "Oh yeah, he's the Beast on Beauty and the Beast," and this is before,
Oh, that's
2 years,
right. I mean, I like
2 years before he's a Hellboy.
Yeah, I've seen Hellboy, and I always associate Perlman with that. But then everyone's like, "Oh, he was Beast on Beauty and the Beast." I'm like, seriously? Like, I watched that show. I didn't realize it was him.
Pretty much. He handles himself well here. He's not as memorable, arguably, as the Klingon sisters, but I mean, he's not even as notable as Khan's henchmen.
Yeah.
I will give him credit. Really the only good battle, in my opinion, is when they go flat out all Wrath of Khan, First Contact Borg invasion all over again. They have another hallway fight because I mean, if there's anything Trek knows how to do well, it's how to have high noon Star Wars level gunfights in a cramped in space. And there's some cool stuff. There's a few Wilhelms. There's a lot of stuntmen falling over balconies and shooting at people. Unfortunately, it feels too contained. Also, again, I keep going back to pros and cons because this movie is constantly a shitstorm, and then constantly it's like a Transformers movie where constantly you're like, "That's so cool," and then you go, "Oh, it's so fucking stupid." It's just back and forth, a mixed bag of emotions, or man, as Will Ferrell says in Anchorman, a glass case of emotion. You are just back and forth, nonstop, and it's like that's not a good feeling. I mean, it might work on a roller coaster. It doesn't work on a movie level. And so it's cool seeing Worf kick some ass, and it's cool seeing Picard kick some ass. But then again, that scene feels a little too contained, and you wish they would go into a whole Klingon level where it's like, okay, at least have people struggling, trying to shoot each other with each other's guns or melee weapons, something. Change it up. A good battle is one, like Lawrence of Arabia. I mean, big, totally different movie, different period, but you know what I mean? You got to change up the circumstances and keep raising the stakes if you don't want this to be repetitive as fuck. So, yeah, it looks cool how they filmed the racing sequence at the very beginning, where they're being ambushed by the evil clone's men. I'm not even saying his name because he's that forgettable, but his name is Shinzon. But he's being ambushed by like a bunch of other aliens when they retrieve the data clone. And it's cool seeing Worf kick some ass there, firing at them, with other laser cannons. But again, it feels like a totally different movie. Like they're trying to cater to the Matrix, Star Wars crowd. It's like, this is not pod racing. This is not Neo bullet dodging. This isn't even, this is a year before Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's totally appealing to that kind of mentality where it's like, got to have different kinds of battles for different kinds of people. And it's like, but it's not Star Trek. So, and it's not even really a movie. It really does nothing for the narrative. It could have lasted 5 seconds and they could have beamed up, but they have to stretch it out. And I'm like, okay, that was clearly for the trailer, but that wasn't for the movie.
Yeah, and just to show that this movie was that it didn't do near its job was the fact that First Contact made $150 million.
Yeah, and it definitely
this made 60. And that's worldwide. This made 67. And the sad part about the 67, 61 million of it was in the U.S. and Canada. Oh, hang on, that's adjusted for inflation.
Well, pretty much. So
43 million of it was in the U.S. and Canada, 24 million in other territories. The other movies, again, First Contact, 92 million in the U.S. and Canada, and 57, much more of a balance.
Yeah, this is just in wrong sauce. Berman explains that Baird will bring fresh blood to the film and enjoy the sense of fun and action that existed in his Executive Decision. Well, guess what? Executive Decision worked as a movie and as a Die Hard clone because, again, they're in different locations. First mission, mission failed. They're at a James Bond, Delta Force type mission.
Well, to be fair, they also got a shit ton of people to go to see Executive Decision because they're like Kurt Russell and Steven Seagal.
Well, that's just it.
One of the stars is dead.
Well, there you go. And it has the mentality of a 70s, Irvin Allen disaster movie, but a better one than even Irvin Allen, could think of, and because it keeps raising the stakes and putting people in more dangerous situations. And I mean, yeah, chapter 1 is figure out what the hell's going on. Chapter 2 is let's get onto the plane, but now the plane is about to fall apart, from the other plane, so we got to get on now. Half our men are gone, and then the next part is take back the plane, and then land the plane, and that's where it runs out of steam. But it's an overall pretty solid genre piece. And here
it's Act 1, figure out what the hell. Act 1, go to wedding. Act 2, what the hell's going on. Act 3,
what the hell's going on.
Act 4, I think I kind of know what's going on. Act 5, okay, what the hell's going on.
Yeah, and it's a damn shame that Franks was in the cast. He should have just stayed on, because at least he would have wanted to bring something new to the table, because he lived and breathed this stuff all his career, so he would have known.
Yeah, but
I hate to say that
did he not want to direct it, or did they not want?
He was completing work on the forgettable kids movie Clock Stoppers for Nickelodeon, which had Jesse Bradford, Paula Garza, French Stewart. Not a good movie in my opinion. But
yeah, you were a kid at the time. I was going to say, but if you were a kid,
yeah, well,
but yeah, I guess I see your point.
It was another one like Thunderbirds, where it's like, okay, he's been paid good money to do that. I'm not going to take that away from him, and maybe he just wants a movie to make for kids, and I can't blame him on wanting to get out of track and try something new. The last thing you need is be pigeonholed and only be invited for a certain show or spinoff. That gets
probably, old. And at some point, I think he probably read the script and saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, and but I hate to say the movie's relying on the director, because clearly everyone else is doing what they need to do, and yet somehow the vision isn't there. So it just goes back to the script.
Well, I think it would have been better with him as a director, because the people they worked with him before, they know him, they like him.
Oh, that, and he also I don't know what else happened here, because Baird had worked on so many movies. He was credited as kind of saving The Last Boy Scout for a movie that had so many stars directing reshoots of it, and
oh yeah,
and so you would think that maybe they should have just given it to Stuart Baird should have been the editor. And I'm trying to think of other filmmakers around this time who would have wanted to do something like this, but who knew something about track, or at least about the audience they were making it for, and not
James Cameron.
Yeah, well, see, that's just it. But unfortunately, James Cameron is like Michael Mann, kind of, where he has to come up with it from beginning to end. It has to be his movie.
Yeah, well, yeah, but
and again,
no, because he did Aliens. He had nothing to do with the beginning, with the first one.
That's true, but
Terminator. No, he did Terminator 1 and 2.
Yeah, he was the brainchild of Terminator. No, that's a good point on Aliens. That was just he thought he could do it better, and he arguably did. But yeah, this I'm not sure who else we could have got. We could have gotten it. Well, here's the other thing too. Because, like we've said, the material just needed a lot of omissions. Like, just get rid of the Picard clone and have it be just about a Data clone. Like, it'd be somewhere interesting if it was another robot on a ship going ape shit,
Or have Tom Hardy be pulling the strings of the Data clone, and the Data clone is parading around as Data, like he was.
Oh hell, there's so many.
There's plenty of ways to have done it.
There's plenty of other British actors even who could have pulled a perfect, evil go-to British bad guy. Bruce Payne was still being used on low-budget shit. We could have had what's his name, Damian Lewis. He just done Band of Brothers, so he was definitely a TV name, semi-movie name. We could have had Brian Cox. This is the same year as Bourne Identity. That would have been fun.
Yeah.
Somehow, they were definitely out of ideas, and again,
it was an interesting choice to do the Romulans.
It was movie. Yeah.
Because I get you've done the Klingons kind of to death, but like every franchise has the bad guy that people want to see, right? For Doctor Who, it's the Daleks. For Star Wars or for Star Trek, it's the Klingons.
Yeah, and we've already joked about South Park Klingon. So a lot of critics like
the Borg or the Klingons, and you did the Borg already, so
yeah, some people like this better than new Star Wars. Some people who were always in the minority kind of liked it better than big 3-hour epics like Lord of the Rings, but well, they can be alone in that opinion.
I would agree. Yeah, I'd agree with you on that.
Roger Ebert had a very mixed review. I'm smiling like a good sport and trying to get with the dialogue, and gradually it occurs to me that Star Trek is over for me. I've been looking at these stories for a lifetime, and let's face it, they're out of gas. So
yeah, I would agree with that. All things must come to an end, you know?
Yeah, and it's a shame too, because from a script writing perspective, there is a lot to lose. I mean, the ship gets beat up very bad here, and yet because of all the, I mean, I don't know why they thought, hey, let's have Troy drive, and she kind of wrecks the ship even more. And seeing the film sequence and the brief 10 seconds where they collide with the ship isn't bad, but that should have just been like chapter 1. Like, if we're going to get into the movie, like, you should have done what Generations did in the finale, just separate the ship again or something, or fuck it up, but then go to stage 1, like, elevate it. Like, let's have them go, like, try to breathe unlimited oxygen or something, or have some other power system that restricts them, their closed quarters, you know? There's so many other Next Generation and Deep Space Nine episodes, like The Classic Way of the Warrior, or, you know, they've already edited Best of Both Worlds together as a feature. You know, they could have done something like that. Just say, hey, what was one of our top rated episodes and why was it good? And how would it work as a movie? And let's revisit. Let's make that a direct sequel. Let's have them, you know, get into some other crazy.
But Berman wouldn't have done that, because Berman got lucky for 17 years that he had people.
He didn't know what made it work.
He had the people that made it work. He didn't know how to make it work.
Right, because like, you look at all these other people who are in charge of stuff, like Sean Ryan. He knows why people like certain shows because he's done actual writing and hired other people who he knows know how to make good stories, and he always wraps up every single season. That's why he went from doing the pilot for Friends to, you know, silly stuff like Nash Bridges to hit shows like The Unit and The Shield and even this generation SWAT. And then you look at Dick Wolf. Again, he was a story editor in Miami Vice and used to write for Hill Street Blues. He'd been behind the writer's room and said, hey, I'm going to make a writing show that's kind of old school but kind of new. It's called Law and Order and FBI. You know, so again, and he again kept that same cast and crew,
right?
And he gave them different roles. He even had old actors who he'd had on the older shows start directing. You know, there is always, he's letting people grow and evolve, and he's daring to amp it up a notch. Even if you don't like that franchise, you can't deny that it earned its place. There was something you couldn't look away from on those kind of shows. So again, like you say, Berman is spoiled by the success in a way to where he's, again, just overworking everyone. He could have contacted so many other people out too, though. I mean, and at the same time, I hate to think who would have been affected by this movie. Like, I was thinking of other people. I mean, Peter Berg and Antoine Fuqua, you know, are great, but I'd hate to think that their movie career would have been hampered by this, you know?
Yeah, well, for sure.
And again, it's just like, yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough to talk to another guy who made a infamous yet cult movie back in 2002, this same year. He is known as Director Chaos, Ballistic X versus Sever. And he was offered
that one.
He was, well, I kind of like that one, but it's more like Jim Cotta commando craziness, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And he's cool if you like it. He's cool if you hate it. He still has like the daily, you know, his version of it before it was taken away by Franchise Pictures and Andrew Stevens fucked around with it. But yeah, so this is definitely in the year where, again, it's not uncommon for someone to have an accidental success or a studio take it away and, you know, your name's on it, whoop-de-doo. This is definitely a kind of movie where it came out of the worst year. I mean, even in 2001, it would not have worked. We were still recovering from 9/11. The market was changing, and people were still getting over, you know, new, you know, evolutions in technology. It's like, oh, we're watching stuff on a disc. We got a sound system. We don't have to go to the movies as much anymore. Oh, pay channel's getting edgy. Now they're coming out with original movies and original TV shows. Who knew? They're not just movie channels anymore. Yeah. So we're adjusting to too much stuff, and, you know, after, you know, the end of the millennium. So they could have waited a while, or just not done it at all. I mean, they could have even just done what everyone does nowadays, where you come out with it and it's a generic half name. It could have been just called Track, you know, or something, and that would have been the comeback. But that's just it. They're just going. They just want to flood the market as opposed to just let it just kind of And don't get me wrong, the market gets worse from here because I mean, then we get sequels to everything, then we get surprise hit comedies, then we get other new stars in the making. So we're all
then there's prequels to everything.
yeah, and then reboots to everything, and then remakes of everything that you didn't know was a remake, and even remakes of bad movies that didn't need to be remade; they were already bad enough. And so we get a lot of that, and then it just keeps trucking along to where I don't know when this movie could have come out. I think it should have just been a TV special.
I think it would have been. I think it would have made for like a good, like almost kind of reunion special on TV.
Oh, there you go, a reunion movie. They could have had a 2-hour movie premiere. It would have been on UPN or even CBS. Make it more mainstream and just premiere.
And that's my problem. That's my problem with Discovery and with Picard. Every Trek fan is telling me how awesome those shows are, and they're better than anything Star Wars, and they're better than anything this and that and this and that. Then why are they afraid to put it on network TV?
Well, that's because Paramount has lost so much money. And
I think a big part of it is if you put it on network TV and it doesn't get the ratings.
Well, that's just it. Because every sci-fi show that's been out the last 10 years has not done well in the ratings.
You've had 2, maybe 3 seasons before they get canceled.
Well, but even then, even the ones that have seasons, they're just relying so much on the Hulu numbers. They're still just not used to it yet. They don't want to take a risk on it. Like Chuck was always a low-rated show, for instance, but it got big numbers when it got replayed on the other channels like Sci-Fi Channel and on Hulu, and the fan base and digital buying was so well rated, so they just let it pass. But save for stuff like Grimm or even new X-Files, like a lot of new
to be fair, Grimm ran its course though. Like my wife watched that show all the time. By the time I got to that last season, it was like it was like Arrow. It was like, all right, yeah, you should have ended a season ago.
I'm fine with that. I mean,
Lucifer would be a good example of one that I'm surprised got canned.
Oh, that's just it too. It's just, again, they don't like it when they get better numbers on streaming than on network. They feel like it's a waste of time, and they're just like, not everybody. Here's the thing: you're putting it on a day that some other show is scheduled. Everyone's watching this or that. I can't think of a single show the last 10 years that I've watched live. It doesn't happen unless it's a very rare day. I'm working. I'm doing stuff like this. I'm doing anything but watching live TV.
If it's not something on the History Channel, like or Discovery Channel, like Expedition Unknown or something, same here. And even those, a lot of times, I'm an hour or two after it airs, I'm watching it.
Well, there you go, because those are just, it's fun. You want to have it on. And
it's somewhat mindless too. I mean, I don't have to pay a lot of attention to it. Like it's interesting to me, but I don't have to sit there and have the emotional roller coaster of a full-on movie.
Well, there you go. And I mean, why else did everyone love MythBusters? It was funny. You learned something, and you didn't have to be totally clued in. They'd recap it for you if you walked out of the room. It was like, okay, so yeah, we're definitely
went off the air and the world went to shit. Go figure.
There you go. And yeah, coronavirus. They should have done a track movie about the coronavirus, but no, don't do that. But
that's the fourth.
Oh God, yeah. So you definitely feel. I don't know when this movie could have come out. Like we said, it could have been just.
I think if it was a TV movie, it would have been fine, like a made-for-cable thing.
That's a good point too.
Or straight to DVD. I mean,
straight to DVD would have worked. I'd like to think it's better than B5 or a Star Wars cartoon, but I don't know.
It's not better than Babylon 5.
Although Babylon 5 is better than Star Trek Nemesis.
You got to give credit to Babylon 5 because
hell, this came out.
Have you ever seen their last episode?
Yeah.
They made damn sure you were not going back to that space station for another show.
Yeah, I mean they go all out and
they destroy it.
Yeah, that's how the story ends. I actually, everyone hates the final season. I actually don't mind it. It's just like the first season where, again, it's not on par with seasons 2 through 4. But I mean, I even liked the Lost Tales movie because it is just a beautiful movie, even if you're not. I mean, it means more if you're a B5 fan, but it is a good standalone movie, and that's beautifully shot. And this Nemesis and all these other blockbusters come out the same year as the Sci-Fi Channel TV pilot, Legend of the Rangers. which I thought was actually pretty solid.
I remember that.
And everybody just flat out shat on. And it seems like they're nitpicks. They're like, everyone's acting like they haven't even seen each other. I'm like, yes, they were acting that way. Jakar was always kind of hardy har har. I'm sure he has a sense of humor. He just downplayed it when he got along with Londo. But no, I think it's a well shot movie, and everyone complained about the CGI. I'm like, I mean,
They stopped using Commodore Amigas.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean,
that's what they used the first 2 seasons.
Yeah, and they're using virtual reality to fight back. That was hardly a Matrix. It was the perfect compromise in making it for a Matrix crowd without compromising the content. But you can't please everyone. And Sci-Fi Channel clearly did not give a shit about it because they aired it the same day as this other like football Super Bowl. I'm like, well, yeah, you're not going to get any numbers if you air it on that. So, but they're the one doing the scheduling. They know what's going on. It's stupid.
Well, sometimes they want something to fail, and that's a good way.
That's how you do it. That's how NBC's done with every other sci-fi show.
That's what Fox did with Firefly. Hey, we're going to air the new episodes as the baseball playoffs are going.
Oh, and out of order.
Yeah, and out of order.
You're totally going to get, and see, that's just it. The network executives, I like the impossible. I'm not going to give Rick Berman any credit. Anybody with a good brain could have broken through and said, hey, let's bring something back. It was going to happen one way or the other. Someone was going to bring Star Trek back and either remake it or make a sequel. There was plenty of other people at Paramount who did want to bring it back, but somehow they chose Berman because he was one of the guys. They should have given it to someone else to bring back and oversee the whole process.
Well, I guess they looked at the fact that he'd been with the show for how many years.
That's just it. He needed to just give the money. He didn't have to do anything else. He didn't have to have these guys write themselves to death. And I mean, I hate to say it, this was pretty reliant on some of these writers. There were some damn good writers. Ira Steven Barr could have something really cool with this. He was already, estranged from, Next Generation, but he could have done something cool with it and would be leagues better. Guaranteed. He could have had Cisco, Janeway, and Picard all come together to stop a conspiracy.
Now, see, that would have been cool.
Okay, perfect. And there you go. Someone's cloning data. So yeah, there you go. They're like, we saw your key card or login at other stations, but he's here on the ship. Who's, who's this imposter who's going around assassinating Starfleet people?
They could have had it be the sequel to the season 1 or 2 episode of Next Generation, where there's those alien creatures that are like taking over Starfleet, and then like you never hear from them again.
Right. Exactly. Or hell, it could have been some other Romulan conspiracy.
Sure.
Better yet, just kind of what they're doing with Picard now. That's what I like about it.
A Starfleet Civil War would have been kind of cool.
I'm hoping they even go there. This supposedly is getting a season 2 pickup, but I think it just has, even though it's playing on the throwback, I like how this and The Mandalorian are just saying, hey, we're just darker. Nothing is given away. Yes, our first episodes are kind of rough, but by episode 2 are free. You're on board, whether you like it or not. Yep. I mean, they at least brought Hugh back. I had no idea they were even going to go in that route with it. Having the Tamlin Tomita as this, Vulcan Starfleet officer who's part of some, conspiracy coup. That's what's really gelling with me right now. And I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy buff. I just like something, that's again. Well, that's fine. What I hate is when I mention conspiracy, everyone thinks I'm one of those Alex Jones, InfoWars morons.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not into that stuff.
No, well, and here's the thing: Alex Jones takes existing conspiracies and then he fucks around with it. I'm like, no, that's a perfectly sound conspiracy, and now you fucked up, JFK and all these other, diseases and massacres and other political arbitrary stuff for the last 20 years. Now it's even more bastardized. And you could even make up a conspiracy. That's what the powers that be want. They want to further, muddy the waters.
Divide us so no one pays attention to them.
It's a broken record, so let's break it even further so you won't be able to stitch it up back together at all. You won't be able to do shit. So, I just like, X-Files in 24 and even Prison Break. people were watching shows like that because those had recurring conspiracies. Even Twin Peaks has a recurring mystery. So whether you find it overrated or love it to death, my point stands in that people like something that gives them a reason to want to find out what's going on, as opposed to throw us in the middle. And this movie throws us in the middle of it without getting involved, and then fails to re-engage us for either the new generation. It's because Rick Berman is this blind. I'm not trying to attack his character. I don't like him as a person or a producer, but this should have just been given to someone else. They should have just done what they weren't going to do, which was give it to J. Michael Straczynski, who had wanted to even helm Enterprise at one point. Pretty much all they did was just take his Babylon 5, alien type clothing. He could have done a really kick-ass job. And speaking of John Michael Straczynski, this is around the same time where, again, TV writers are very rarely being allowed to write a movie. Nowadays, if they have a hit Netflix or TNT or CBS show, they get it, like Kenya Barris, creator of the Blackish TV franchise. He gets to do at least 2 comedies every year. And that's a rarity. He's earned that power. And he's a good writer, in my opinion. But then you see other people like Chris Carter, who got lucky on X-Files and didn't know really what to do with it except just keep fucking with people's minds, like it or hate it. Right. And this is kind of what these track writers are stuck in. And, J. Michael Straczynski, he later goes on to write blockbusters like Thor, World War Z, Changeling for Clint Eastwood. And he talked about how he got all these scripts on the blacklist, and he was literally having to start all over again because people either weren't familiar with his TV work, or again, because he'd never done a movie that went to theaters. He'd been doing 3 different sci-fi shows for the last, over 20 years. So, and even Captain Power was where he got his start, a kids show that was geared as being a little too violent for adults because it had something for everybody. So it is interesting how he had to start all over again, but he earned it because he is a legit good writer. He knows what the executives are looking at. He's done the producing side of things. He knows what the audience is looking for. And so again, he could have done a banged up job. He or some other genre writer could have really done a good job. And unfortunately, again, Rick Berman really also screwed up by, you do want to know why Ronald D. Moore is no longer associated with this. Don't get me wrong. I'm fine that he moved on and did Battlestar Galactica and a bunch of other hit shows, but he had really tread poorly on the waters by, again, even though Ronald has been the go-to, writing some of the best Klingon episodes of Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, as well as standalone philosophical episodes, he is still treating Ronald. He was kind of going to go to him as the showrunner, but he again gives it to Brandon Braga, who's already worn out from Voyager. And after it's clear that Ronald's not going to get promoted, he pretty much steps away, and it takes him years to kind of forgive the misunderstanding with Brandon Braga. But I'm pretty sure. Oh, yeah. But so yeah, Rick Berman goes on to say in the 50-year journey that, if I look at what people are saying on me on Wikipedia and it's all bullshit, but what can you do about it if people believe it? I'm like, well, here's the thing.
There's enough people saying it that it's true.
Yeah. Actors like Terry Farrell said this about you. All the other writers and producers hated working for you or feared working for you.
Yeah.
And Ira Steven Barr was the only guy who knew how to compromise because he was literally the Spock of the writing staff. He was talking logic, saying, no, here's how you write this because this is what they want to see. And he won every single argument ever until Rick was just tired because he wasn't going to want to lose Ira. So it's just a shame that no one had the stones or just couldn't. They just could not argue with this bastard. So, and it makes you wish that, again, Michael Piller had come back and at least fleshed everything out so everyone had something to work with again. Or better yet, let him write it. Rick, you did not need to write this. You could have let Piller, your partner in crime, write this with Spiner and whoever else. It would have been great. Or at least better than what we got. So,
we really went off on this one, didn't we?
It was inevitable. It's just like in Borg Invasion, criticizing is futile. So yeah, we pretty much just got into everyone. Some people come back once in a while and say it's not that bad. I'm like, that might be the case. It might not be worst of the year, but it's not great. It's decidedly average. Yeah, I could give it a free maybe for the out of 5 for the action, but even then, I'm being too nice. I'm being way too nice. I've watched it a few different times, but this is back before you get all critical and start being more honest. And I am a guy who tries to be more fair. I'm not the kind of guy who is like, this has to be this has to be theatrical. I look at everything for what it's trying to be and what it succeeds. And sometimes I even look at, okay, it didn't succeed at what it was trying to do, but it was still entertaining, whether for the right or wrong reasons. Like there's people who agree and disagree on whether
Hence
Showdown
B movies.
There you go. Showdown, Little Tokyo, or Commando are good movies. And I mean, you did plenty of Misty movies, which, again, everyone varies on whether that's the worst sack of shit ever or whether they're just being just too cruel because they're not familiar with independent movies. I've seen all kinds of independent movies. I review screeners all the time for the Action Elite. I've had to do a lot of dog shit that is well written, but has sound that you can't listen to and overexposed lighting. I've had other people who they made movies that don't deserve to be called action movies because there's literally just 2 seconds of a fight in the entire runtime. I'm like, this is not an action movie. This is a thriller with no suspense and just one half a fight. It's just, yeah. And so I've had all kinds of stuff. I never look at anything being the right way. I just try to just look in the realm it belongs in.
I mean, really, that goes for both of us because you on my show, I'm not reviewing. I mean, once in a while there's a movie that probably was an A-list movie when it came out, but by today's standards, I think it's a B movie. But
dude,
I look at it for if it's a good watch.
That's just it, yeah. And you always just go for this is a movie you can watch with your friends. This is a movie that you can get $5 on eBay. You don't lose anything.
Except Slipstream.
Well, yeah, I can't blame you on that one, but I only can count that on the internet, and for the longest time that would keep coming on those various 5 DVD packs. I'm like,
and everyone talked about how I was told by so many people, oh, this movie's great. Bill Paxton's character in that is one of the most annoying characters ever.
It's entertaining if you just want something to just get high to, I guess. No.
You know what? Worse than Insurrection, or no, worse than Nemesis. Sorry.
Well, that kind of goes without saying, though. I mean, because that movie had so much money and it doesn't look like a big budget movie. You know what I mean? It's one of those movies you watch and you're like, where did the budget go?
And it had some big name actors.
Mm-hmm. And it just,
dude, Ben Kingsley's in it for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm okay with getting people. It's like, if you like this movie, you might like this movie. But when it just gets to the point where all you can do is just compare it to other movies, again, something's got to give. And there you're comparing, paint drying to, watching infomercials with that one. So it's like, I'd rather watch that one over infomercials and paint drying, but that's still, it's a hard ass. So with this movie, you can watch it once for the experience, the theatrical experience. But if you look for something deeper, you're going to come away disappointed every time. You're going to like the data moments, but since they're few and far in between, and it's so reliant on just, hey, look what we're doing with visual effects of this era. This is groundbreaking. It's like, it is groundbreaking, but at the same time, effects should tell the story, as opposed to, look what I did there. It just feels too much like community theater where everyone's trying to, ask that their daughter who gave a performance only their mom would be proud of, did a good job. It's like, well,
yeah,
it's not bad, but I can't say anything nice either. So
yeah, pretty much. Yep.
It's a rough movie. A lot of people I find like this better than Insurrection. See, Insurrection to me, even if whoever was behind the camera, I like, again, just the playing God and just going away from a village and saving people. And Patrick has some way better lines there. And here is just like, there's a conspiracy. Who cares? It's just like, yeah, my point exactly. Who cares? I don't even know what's going on. It took me years to even divulge this fucking story. And even when I found out, I'm like, whatever. It goes so fast that you're never really engaged.
Yeah, and it really is kind of a mess.
And that's a shame because, I mean, I like movies that go fast, but I don't like movies that have wasted stuff or potential either, you know? So I
You know, to be fair, after we discussed it this long, I kind of almost understand and feel for Berman when he says he doesn't know why it wasn't successful. Because we've named a lot of things that it had going for it that just didn't work.
well, that's just it. He's the salesman.
Like, I
So,
mean, like
to him,
the director was someone well known. The writers were well known. The you know Spiner helped write it. All these things should have made for a relatively solid movie.
there you go. So
And for whatever reason, it just
yeah, because I mean Carson and Pillar were involved, but you know Generations and Insurrection got shot on, but arguably not unwatchable.
I mean, the story was by Berman, Logan, and Spiner, but when you look at it, the screenplay is just credited to Logan.
Yeah, so okay.
Baird was a proven director. I mean,
U.S. Marshals people shit on, but I'll accept it.
That's a good movie.
Yeah, yeah, it's a decent spinoff and a good excuse to have Tommy Lee Jones again just kick some ass and Wesley Snipes kick some ass. But so, like you say, I mean, Stuart Baird's worked on all these blockbusters and he got the job because he'd already done Tomb Raider, for as an executive producer, helping with the reshoots and editing process for Paramount. So he'd saved that movie, even though everyone varies on that movie.
I think Paramount wanted something that was newer and hipper and would appeal to, like you said, the MTV crowd. Berman went and got a director that directed movies that were focused towards that crowd. I don't think at the time anybody had the thought that he is not familiar with Star Trek. Because I think they wanted something different, but
they didn't think it mattered. They thought, okay, it's all about the style.
They need something in between.
So it's kind of like their disconnection with sci-fi, like how everything had to be like Star Wars or Matrix or Lord of the Rings, for that matter. They're caught up in everything has to be hip and attention getting, which is weird because there's some similar fast editing shots, on Enterprise, but I'd argue that works there. Because, I mean, they were still doing some of those same kind of tracking shots on the other track shows, the dolly, the intense close-up. They do it later on other genre stuff like NYPD Blue and Battlestar Galactica. So they're doing many formulas that have worked, and they've been doing so long, they're not going to change unless they have to. And this is before they go all digital. And here it's just like they got caught up on the technical stuff. And again, they forgot, is the story good? Just because it's by one of the actors doesn't mean it's good. And they just needed to, there's so much going on. They need it. You would think that with the best editor all the time, it could be edited down, but that's just it. I think he was just so overwhelmed and he wasn't getting along with anyone. That's just it. It just, the best takes were ones that still felt just don't want to be here. And we talked about that with Generations, but that's what's so weird is that, I mean, they worked with a excellent cinematographer and a director who had worked for the show. So, and some of the same other crews. So, and I mean, it was their first time out, so I'm not going to act like they're being shoddy, but they at the same time wanted to include the original series cast. Here, they have nothing, like you say, they're catering to the new crowd, but they're not, nothing has changed all that terribly much, yet at the same time, again, they just, I mean, looking at the script, there's no telling what that could look like because it just all comes down to how dense your imagination is. I'm sure Logan had some cool emotional scenes. I haven't read the script, but, knowing what he did with Gladiator. Now, it's funny how he and Stuart Baird work on a lot of the acclaimed James Bond movies, of recent. I found some of those to be entertaining and some of them to be overrated but entertaining, and I don't know, I think they just got too melodramatic and they needed someone who was just more intense. Like, hell, they could have gotten fucking Aaron Sorkin. He had done movies and TV. He would make a very Speedy Gonzalez track movie that would make you feel intelligent. So
make you feel like you're on cocaine.
Yeah, there you go. And he'd have the same tracking down the hallway shots as West Wing, which would be fine because I mean they did that all the time on the original series where there's just a mouse. I call it the mouse shot where you just
do what they keep talking. Just do what they talk about with Bond and Trek now. Put Tarantino there. Let him direct one. What the hell?
I totally agree. I'm so pissed that they passed on his script. I was just like, it can't be anything worse than some of his other movies that divide audiences.
Get these motherfucking tribbles off this motherfucking starship.
Oh God, have you seen that one random shit post where they make Sam Jackson look like a Klingon?
No.
Oh, it's great. I should send that to you. I'll send that when we're done. Oh God. So yeah, we're just very. This definitely deserved to go out with a bang, but at the same time, because the audience kind of wasn't there and they picked a terrible year, they just had so much working against it. They had a crew that wasn't jiving with the cast, and then they had so many other broken promises and a bad year. So
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it was a total whimper to go out on.
yeah, I mean, they're
But
firing on all fours, and there's like 5 different battles. I mean, there's even the Romulans helping them out, but then it's like they're trying to again one up Wrath of Khan and First Contact and have, you know, interior battles, outside battles. So again, maybe you could, I wouldn't say it's a fan film, but it is definitely kind of a greatest hits. And again, when it's the greatest hits, it's still not as good as listening to the complete, you know, remastered album.
Right.
When it was fresh and new. So we got franchise fatigue and exhaustion, and I really don't know what else to say. I mean,
You got a lot of editing on this one.
Oh well, yeah, especially since we've been interrupted 5 different times by my goddamn internet.
Well, there's that too.
Oh God.
But no, I think we've gone round and round enough with it. I mean,
it's not awful, but it's not great.
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, we've gone over pros and cons in a roundabout way on it, and yeah, I had hoped it would have been better.
We know what could have changed. We were excited to see it. It came out when, you know, everyone's embracing DVD special features. They definitely did not, you know, especially the other ones, they did not do, you know, many special features for, because they did later when they re-released it on special edition DVDs and Blu-rays. But I mean, this one they went all out, and some people liked it, but it seemed like they were the kind, you know, they don't mind, you know, rainy day movies, or they were hardcore fans, so they were going to like it anyway. But
it's an alright rainy day movie. I give it that.
Yeah, I mean, you can watch it, and I mean, I don't ever really. Some movies do just play better on cable TV. Like, I mean, and some stuff I don't really ever want to revisit because it's just kind of a one-time watch. And the more you analyze certain movies, the more they fall apart. They're just
right.
They're, and it seems like this is part intelligent, part disorganized, part junk food generation level movie. And don't get me wrong, I like junk food, but I don't need every movie to be like, you know, it's again trying to challenge not only what Joel Silver's doing, but also Jerry Bruckheimer's doing, and just again every other stylized filmmaker and director. Back when everyone thinks, oh, it's just the star actor that makes or breaks a movie, I'm like, no, there's plenty of stuff behind the scenes that determines that. But we're definitely getting a lot of that where it just seems like they're trying something new. It wasn't gelling, but they're getting through it. They're getting it done on time, and they didn't think they were going to go wrong. And it just makes you wish they could have done maybe a few more sneak previews, you know, audience testing, and just changed around a few more things before they just finally landed. Like, have a scene with our heroes first. I mean, and then show the poisoning scene.
Right.
And then, I mean, don't even
explain who the people that got poisoned were.
Yeah, when you find this B4 guy, the Data's clone, just literally just pick him up. And if you have to have someone shoot at you, have them be stupid stormtroopers, you know, they miss, and then you beam up, and then boom, they get attacked by their ship, and they warp out of there, and then the rest of the movie is a mystery / battle movie. Boom. And just come up with something besides a clone. Just like you say, it could have been just a puppet master guy, just some guy trying to cause a war between various factions. I mean, there's a Janeway cameo here too, and you would have thought that would have brought a lot more to the movie. But I mean, the Doctor on Voyager brings more to First Contact, and he doesn't make a difference in the movie. But it's funny. It's a rare instance where it's helping you realize that, hey, they're in a different part of the ship. You know, everyone's being affected by this. And I mean, that's like a 5-second cameo, and this, you know, this is a 1-minute cameo, and it's supposed to signify something, but it's really just feels like, again, fanfare that doesn't work for the movie. So, and again, like we've said on here, we're not the biggest Voyager guys. So I
Right.
mean, but that's the other thing with Voyager is there's a lot of leftovers from DS9 and TNG that could have been better. And again, they were suffering franchise fatigue. They just needed a different producing crew. I would have rather they given it hell. They should have given it to Joel Silver or Jerry Bruckheimer, and they would have totally been on board for this. Joel would have been like, "I want to make a movie that movie lovers will love. Get it done." And I mean, Stuart Baird was already used to Joel telling him what he was looking for and yelling, saying, "We're running out of time. We got to get this."
Yep.
Because they both got along, even though they were totally different personas and other people weren't necessarily getting along with him. That would have worked. And Bruckheimer, I'm sure, again, would have been perfect. He would have left you to your devices as long as it was hell. Fucking Tony Scott or Michael Bay would have done way better with this. I can't believe I'm going there. But, Tony would have had, again, a Michael Mann-esque explanation while explain the obvious while something fancy and cool is going on. And Michael Bay would have had, Armageddon or The Rock style random explosions while still making awesome, tracking and close up shots over editing that would make you dizzy and go, "Oh my god, this is cool," or just revolt people. But still, if the content's good, Michael Bay can do a way better job, even if he ignores it all. This would have been a way better version of his Transformers.
That's true.
Yeah, and or even just again, it would have been more of what we liked, Michael Bay level Bad Boys, The Rock, Armageddon. So
yeah,
here again, and again, it seemed like Logan's script was just trying to do too much. Somehow it worked for Gladiator because I mean that's a period piece movie.
Right.
It's like Braveheart. Well, Braveheart's a historical movie that's inaccurate but pretty cool, and that's more historical.
Completely inaccurate, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's Mel Gibson. What do you expect? But I was almost expecting him to have a Jewish dictator or something. Yeah, the British were Jewish. They tried to take our land. And yeah, this definitely needed some more command and conquer stuff. But it seems like John Logan uses leftovers for this for Skyfall. He's like, I'm gonna have James Bond be on his soapbox the entire time too.
Yeah, I would have liked this. I would have liked for them to have toned it down and made it, like I said, more like they were going for a political thing like Undiscovered Country. Then they should have just went for a political thriller with some action.
Hell,
it's like they couldn't decide on what they wanted to do, so they're like, well, hell, let's just throw a kitchen sink at it. Let's throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
Pretty much. This is around the same time that they're trying to make every movie be like The Bourne Identity, and people like to give those movies a bad name because they don't like certain shaky cam. I mean, but they seem to forget that those movies just made a lot of good reviews and money because they were also very intelligent, kind of like better Mission Impossible or better James Bond, or even
I think that those were actually better than the James Bond movies for a while.
Absolutely. I mean, and I even liked the new Treadstone show because I was like, okay, that's a big world. That's what I liked about Legacy, is like enhance the world. It's even a better all-star cast movie for Tim Kring, much like Crossing Jordan. And instead, he became kind of better known for, Heroes, which was kind of noted for we like the concept, we don't like the execution for some people. And
like Nemesis.
Yeah, there you go. And so, yeah, it's a shit sandwich, but it's not a movie. I mean, I could handle the riff tracks of it. It would be hysterical, but they've given up on that. They've already done literally every generation. They've already done one of the first Abrams movie. They've already done the good and bad original series movies and generations. They're not revisiting any of these anytime soon. They moved on to, movies they can afford that have the commentary with them. So, I feel like at the same time, it's so slow. It's not really worth talking any more shit about.
We've only talked shit for an hour and a half about it.
Yeah, and I mean, if anything, watch it for the visual effects.
Yep,
they're not shabby. I can't believe I've said this the whole time and I haven't really mentioned the effects. The makeup is solid.
Yep.
Again, the only real stuff is for Shinzon and the Romulans, but since they're not on screen all the time, you don't really think about it. The art direction is good, but again, everyone's kind of so underutilized. Geordie's not really all that well used either. And that's a shame because I mean he's well.
Not only did they take the directing job away from him, they barely had him in the movie.
Yeah, was Berman trying to say something there? Because I know, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of other track actors who knew he did not like them. Like I forget what his name is, the Asian American guy who kind of played the one note bridge officer on Voyager. Always talked about how for whatever reason, Rick Berman fucking hated his guts. He just didn't like him, and he was like, I don't know what. I've never even met this guy, and this fucker hates me. So we're definitely, like you say, they've already had the nerve to cut Will Wheaton out of the movie, except for a scene where you can DVD pause. But hey, come on, 2002, no one's fucking doing that. They still got dial-up internet, and bootlegging movies don't take off until like 05, 07. So, this isn't a thing yet. We don't have that opportunity. We don't have that much free time to even go see an expensive double screening. So
and realistically, if Will Wheaton's scenes had been in there, things might have been different for him. He might have had a more a resurrected career earlier than it took.
Yeah, before becoming a writer and kind of pulling a Carrie Fisher, where he's comedic or George Takei for that matter. Or even Shatner. He's pretty much did fall into that same category as those three others of either franchise, and just.
Yeah, but they were still, well, Shatner was actively doing other stuff still, though.
Well, yeah, that's true too. I mean, but no one expected him to pull that maneuver either. I mean, and like you say, I mean, George Takei's kind of doing what Will does, where they just resort to occasional rare TV guest appearances and then stick to voice acting and appearing on comedy shows, either as themselves or as just commentators. So yeah, like you say, this would have been way different. I would have thought that Brent Spiner would have had a bigger film career after this, but after this and Master of Disguise both flop, again, he just goes back to TV shows, which is a shame because he is a talented man. I mean, he's demonstrated some surprisingly dramatic roles. He was in other movies around the same time as Trek, too, like Phenomenon and all, Out of Makeup.
I forgot he was in that.
Well, there you go. And I mean, he's later on Brandon Braga's show Threshold and as well as Ira Stephen Barr's Alphas. But it's just so annoying when someone is having to rely on that one. I mean, stuntman Tom Morga. This is kind of his last outing for Trek. He's already doubled, Riker and Spock and played every alien on the show. And he joked how, they remember your name if you keep, your name tag in the, the suit. Right. And this is kind of the same mentality I get for this. It's just everybody's having to wait for the phone to ring. And it's just annoying because that everybody is working their ass off on here. Everyone seems to be disappointed with this. I can't blame them, but it's kind of annoying because Spiner's already disappointed with Insurrection. Franks is satisfied. Stewart hasn't said anything since, but it seemed like he liked the other revisions of the script after hating the initial draft, even though who knows, maybe that's why LeVar Burton lost the opportunity because he actually liked the earlier infamous version of Insurrection. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
There's so many factors here that aren't gelling that if I could rewrite history pointlessly, I would for this stupid movie.
What would you do if you can go back in time? I'd rewrite Insurrection. Yeah. No, I'd rewrite Nemesis. Sorry, wrong one.
Yeah, a movie no one remembers or accepts track guys. So it is a shame how. And I kind of felt this way for a while. I would watch a rerun of Next Generation or the original, on occasion. But it didn't. All of a sudden, you got this instance. I was still a young junior high schooler at this time. It all of a sudden kind of became cool to just kind of mock Trek or just not really watch it. And at the same time,
let's be fair. Unless you were a sci-fi fan and a Trek fan, the average people always mock Trek because Trek used to be more intellectually focused. I know it sounds goofy when you think of Kirk, but it kind of was. And the average audience didn't get that, right? Like they want the action and stuff.
And it seemed like other than First Contact and Wrath of Khan, it wasn't really making waves with any moviegoers.
No, the big one with non-Trek fans was Star Trek 4.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, that one got a lot of cable TV play, and again, everyone just seemed to always just be like, my older brother or sister liked it, my uncle liked it.
It's so funny what he does to that guy with the radio. Yeah, they liked it because of the campy '80s stuff that's in it.
Yeah,
not
it's
so much because of the plot, you know.
right.
But
It's
they
John
watched it and liked it, so that grew the
Right.
audience.
And I mean, Wrath of Khan and First Contact are so action packed. You know, again, obviously they're more accessible. They're just like a Star Wars movie, except even more intense and freaky. And yeah, like Part 4 again, it's just a fun movie as long as you don't dig too deep into it and you dig the humor. So it's just annoying how again Trek had this death spell for a while, and then just keeps getting brought back. And again, it's kind of falling into X-Files or Star Warsville, whereas like it's not as good as the originals. But then at the same time, now everyone's like, oh, I don't like the originals. I like this new generation. So we're having a lot of agree to disagree. And then Star Trek just always got more complicated because I mean, my grandmother was into the original, could never get into the next ones, just couldn't keep up. She had to just have her murder or comedy show at 6 and go to bed after the news. So it's just interesting how more generations, so to speak, just kept getting more and more just less affiliated with this, keeping less track of it. Track. So it's a shame that it went this route. I would like to maybe take a decade off and maybe get some of the TV shows that we like or hate now. I'm just digging more Picard just slightly more than you are, bro. I mean, I love Mandalorian, but that's a slow burn, and this is too. This is a slow burn.
No, I like Picard, but I've only had time to watch the first 2 episodes. I mean, so it's not like I don't like it.
Well, I'll just say this: it's fan service, but it's like 10 BJs all in one night for me personally. But it's just very cool.
Let's specify 10 good ones.
Well, yeah. This is very calculated, very intriguing.
Yeah. Well, it has a very spy kind of plot to it.
Yes, that's exactly what I like.
That's what I like about it. We're like Discovery. I like parts of it. I like the effects. I like some of the actors and actresses, but like the spore travel and all,
Totally agree. I mean, the only thing I really like about Discovery
that already, so it's kind of like, well,
I'm holding my breath for season 3. I haven't seen all of the other seasons. I've just seen bits of them. I'm going to go through them all again when season 3 premieres.
Yeah.
I know. I like how they have mini episodes called short tracks. That's literally what they call it. But my other issue with that is that's just a fun side story. Those are like the Marvel one shot, short films they do on the Blu-rays and DVDs. And again, you're only going to watch those once, maybe twice. But I thought so many other movies and shows like The Wire, Prison Break, 24, even Breaking Bad had a lot of, and even Battlestar Galactica all had some exclusive web content, which they would later re-edit and be special features. And they were doing that, in between shows. They were embracing the internet, way before we had, politicians doing so, to make speeches and fire whatever propaganda they want. So it's such a shame that this track kind of didn't take advantage of the internet. It should have been number one. It should have been rolling the internet. Because I mean, I would go to StarTrek.com.
And Star Trek is a sci-fi show. I mean, it should be a natural like.
Yeah, it predicted the iPad. Come on, and it just
everything. They use tablets for everything in TNG.
Yeah, the Windows Surface. So it's just like you got all this technology. It should have been embraced technology, but it didn't. It kept having it didn't have an identity crisis like Hellraiser or Star Wars, but it did have. It just seemed to have so many cooks in the kitchen. It's ultimately what we're just coming down to. And it's for the better for some of that. I mean, I know plenty of people who, get into wars all the time. They only like one of the, 5 shows. I'm like, okay, cool, chill. We're going to have to agree to disagree. That's okay. I know people who have seen Deep Space Nine and Voyager who don't want to be bothered with any of the other ones. They think Next Generation's boring. They think original series is too outdated and cheesy. And I'm like, okay, that's okay.
Who the hell thinks Deep Space Nine is more exciting than Next Generation?
You'd be surprised. So many people seem to think that the later seasons with all the battles are way better. But see, my thing is, Deep Space Nine is kind of more, for me, kind of an anthology, if you will. And I'm not a Ferengi guy, so obviously it took me years to really embrace that fucking show, And it
Well,
wasn't.
yeah, but I always hear that argument. Well, if you skip to season 4, dude, if I gotta skip 3 years of a show,
Yeah.
they did something wrong.
Right. I mean, there's like maybe 3 episodes that really hit the mark on Enterprise at least, and then the rest of it is just meh. It's like, okay, I like the scenario, I didn't like the execution, or I like the execution, but it took a while, or the acting and effects weren't quite there.
I mean, to me, for all the flaws Voyager had,
Yeah.
at least it was still exploring in our space.
Yeah, it was lost
They
in
weren't
space.
traveling through time. They weren't traveling dimensions for the most part. They were in our universe.
Right. And the whole
Which
thing
I
is
liked.
they can't get home. And
it was lost in space, which is what I liked about it.
Yeah,
and it
lost
had
in
its flaws, but now everything is, oh, we jumped dimensions. Oh, we're in a different time period. Oh, we
yeah,
it's not what you're about. You're supposed to be to seek out new planets and shit, not this.
Pretty much it. I mean, it's basically, yeah, Next Generation and the original series were their own identity. But I mean, even Ira had to come to Rick Berman and say, you do realize we have to go outside the space station. And he rebelled against that. And that's why Deep Space Nine also suffered. It took so much back and forth having to convince. And as a result, that's also why I'm not 100% with it. I mean, I mentioned it as one of the greats, but at the same time, don't get me wrong. I like Babylon 5 more than Deep Space Nine. I know, unpopular opinion, but I prefer B5.
I agree with you, to be honest.
Well, that's fine because I mean, everyone likes to tease it about its low budget and old school 90s computer graphics. I'm like, you're not looking at the content. If you get past the hammy acting, I mean, you can handle Shatner or Picard overacting. Why can't you handle, Bruce Boxleitner screaming at someone? It's just
it was a grittier show too, though. It was more crime drama.
Yeah, when it was first promoted to the executives, they even reused a lot of the same actors and crew from that. They said this is going to be Hill Street Blues in outer space, and everyone was instantly on board. I mean, I look at it back then, and it still even feels like ER, and it has even some of the same actors as Law and Order and NYPD Blue. So
yeah,
it's not. It was combining Star Wars battles with track tech, and then building its own mythology. And everyone likes to again complain.
You know what? It outlasted the original Star Trek series.
Boom, roasted. And
I mean, it had 5 years.
It had 5 years.
It had the actual 5-year journey.
And they did not have an easy journey, too. They had it worse off. They got criticized for the main actor, who I don't understand.
I thought he was fine.
I thought he was great. And they hated his voice. They hated everything about it. The critics were roasting him. And fans look at him now and they're like, he's a great captain. I wonder why he disappeared. And they didn't know until years later that, he had schizophrenia and,
yeah,
he was deeming himself, dangerous to work with. So he had to, again, the writer was good. He went on the record saying, I had a trapdoor for every character. So that's why, Andrea Thompson's telepath leaves suddenly as a spy and gets replaced again with the original choice, which is Andrea Thompson. Or not Andrea, Patricia Tallman,
right.
as Lita. So, and again, Boxleitner was a good choice, and Claudia Christian was a good choice. She had done plenty of made-for-TV, drive-in sci-fi horror movies, and there's a lot of people and visual effects people you see who come from the Charles Band, Full Moon. So so it might look like
Charles Band.
I know. So it might be B movie.
That's a whole nother episode show.
Oh, totally. There's even a lot of Star Trek guys who appear in his stuff. Even Hellraiser people appear in his stuff. So a lot of people are familiar with those kind of environments, but those do that and B5 do a good job of just, low budgetness. And don't get me wrong, dude, I'm down to talk about all the B5 movies with you if you want.
I think I've only seen the first one.
Really?
I don't think I saw the rest. I gotta catch up on it. Yeah, I mean, they've been out for 20 years.
You can buy them in perfect quality off of either Vudu. Way more recommended, especially for the shows, because it does very little cropping back and forth, and seems to be a lot of people have noted they seem to be from the original prints.
That's cool.
Because the DVDs have some redubbed dialogue and other title changes. Yeah, but it's still if you look at the new reprints of it, it's just not going to look good on your high def TV screen. And it was annoying because it was so convenient for me to watch on Amazon Prime, but again, it just was too outdated, even with the digital enhancing.
Well, I had read that they shot Babylon 5 in like the right aspect ratio for future like high def stuff, but because of the CGI, it's hard to.
Well,
or
because
it's been really hard for them to like.
They
And I
destroyed
think
the
they
files.
well, yeah, and I think they had the same
so-
problem with the Next Generation. Was it was just really hard to do the conversion,
Well,
and they eventually did it. But
they did, and after those sales weren't too good, they pretty much canceled the Blu-rays for all the other stuff, and that's why they said, "Here's the compromise: everything's on streaming. That's just as good as you're gonna get." And I like how H&I and Pluto TV are showing shows like this.
Oh, I do too.
But
I love Pluto TV.
Yeah, but it's also a shame. Even Tubi's also being a savior for so many people who want to find older stuff and newer stuff at the same time. And Crackle's a neat backup, but it's so annoying how it just took forever for this to kind of be embraced. So Shrek and B5 just both come from a long line of just studios that don't know why they worked, and Warner Brothers was even lucky that B5 even got a DVD release, because had it not had some decent fanfare, like they didn't want anything that was on that old what they had before the WB network. They did not like any of that stuff. That was just to fill time. So had they not had had J. Michael not embraced the internet and fan conventions, there's no telling, we might still be looking at old VHS copies of this stuff.
True.
There was apparently fans that remastered a lot of it on other interwebs, but those got taken down for copyrights. But it seems like, again, much like
how about hire, if the fans could figure it out, how about hire them?
Well, that's just it. Like, basically, that's what it's going to have to take. The fans are going to have to literally just rally and just either boycott WB altogether or something. But that's going to be near impossible to do, because a lot of people aren't B5 people or don't remember it, which sucks. But because J. Michael Straczynski and the executives have burned bridges with each other, because and literally unless he because I mean, he could offer to buy the franchise back, but it's another case where the studio doesn't want anyone making money off of it, even though it's a franchise that they're not going to do anything with. So unless Amazon or Google or even Facebook buy Warner Brothers and decide, hey, let's bring B5 back, or Netflix, there you go, Netflix buy. But see, Netflix doesn't have anywhere near as much money as they.
No. Once Disney buys them.
Well, there you go.
It'll be back.
Maybe.
You watch in the next 5 years, Disney's going to as much as people hate Disney, they're going to bring back stuff like Firefly and all kinds of other shit from the Fox stuff they bought. And they can't handle Terminator and Alien franchises any worse than Fox did.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much Terminator is dead for now, unless they decide to remake it, which is probably going to be inevitable.
Retcon it all and start it and pick it up right after T2.
Oh, that's going to be
everything except those first two.
Maybe. I mean, James Cameron's going to disown it anyway, so it doesn't matter.
I mean, they own Alien, they own Predator, and they own Terminator. 3 of the greatest sci-fi franchises ever that got ran into the ground by Fox.
Well, Fox.
It's a matter of time before they buy Paramount and Warner Brothers.
Well, there you go. And then they got, now they have X-Men. There's no telling what they're going to do with that. I mean, obviously they're going to reboot it, retcon it. It's very frustrating because it's just going to have more divided fan bases. But at the same time, I am curious to see what it would be like. Yet at the same time, there's just no telling until it happens. Now,
I mean, I don't have high hopes in the first place. Like after the Star Wars prequels, I didn't have high hopes for the Star Wars franchise. Honestly, I like all the movies they've done better than any of the 3 prequels.
That's fine. I find Return of the Jedi and Attack of the Clones to be pretty weak. I can't do anything
on that.
I like Revenge of the Sith. It's not as good as Empire Strikes Back, but it's better than the first 2 prequels.
I think we need to wrap up because I think my daughter's starting to cry. Yep, that's her. Damn it.
Oh shit.
Well, let's wrap up real quick. So
I mean, I really like Rogue One, where they went with that in The Mandalorian. If they just stop going all Skywalker and homages,
I think they're gonna.
I mean, they have to. I mean, they saw what Solo did and how that divided the fan base. A lot of people liked it, but people.
I was one of them.
Okay, that's fine. I have not seen it yet. All I know is like that guy does not look like Harrison Ford.
No, but he did a good job acting. I thought it was a fun ride.
Okay, that's fine. I mean,
Yeah,
Rogue One for me, I liked how it was kind of a tribute, but it didn't like still just various shots. It didn't have more Death Stars and Sith Lords. It's like, okay, let's make this be a James Bond, Guns of Navarone spy movie, just like the original Star Wars and Return of the Jedi.
Well, what was nice about Solo was you didn't have any of the Skywalker shit. You didn't have any of the Rebel Alliance. None of that. It was a heist movie.
Yeah, it was a heist movie, and it's funny how Ron Howard ended up directing that. Because I mean, the production hell that didn't go too well, and he was supposed to direct the prequels, and I think he would have done a good job. He would have definitely done a better job with that than he did with Da Vinci Code or even fucking Backdraft. God, more like First Draft, like many of these track movies. So I mean, I hope that Trek does return the movies. They're saying they're doing a fourth movie, and like Abrams will produce, and they'll give it to someone else. But I'm honestly done with that storyline. I like the actors in that.
It's been too long between.
Well, that's just it. That's exactly it. They take forever with these sequels, and I mean, as movies, I mean, sometimes they announce sequels too fast. Like I'm still waiting on Red Free or Now You See Me Free, but that's just it. Those, it's like the studio, and even Sicario and Equalizer had some good, were good franchises. But it seems like after a while, like the studios just they don't want to make any more sequels, and then they make all these sequels you never asked for. That did not have that big a fan base, and it's like, what's going on here? So it is annoying how Netflix is kind of convincing people, hey, it's not going to make any money, so just give it to us. We're the new direct-to-video, but we don't want to be called that. We're streaming, get it? It's just like made for TV, but on your internet, it's better.
Yeah.
So it's annoying, and because I mean, I deal with a lot of amateur and independent filmmakers, so I have guys at each other's throats all the time who are just very unprofessional, want everyone to kiss their ass, and it's like, hold on a second, we're all in this together, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
dial the ego back, and let's actually make a movie we can actually take our family to see, let alone have people watch and actually enjoy. So Shrek is a good example on how a franchise can divide people, let alone inspire people. It seems like again, more people are inspired by a lot of the simple philosophy in the Star Wars movies. And I mean, again, people are just going to see it anyway because it's that instant kind of name recognition. Well, Star Trek, some people are going to see it, but somehow it's not going to make Star Wars numbers, let alone Godzilla or James Bond numbers. So we're in a weird quandary with this. I mean, I think every once in a while I will see people say they should have made a Deep Space Nine or Voyager movie, and I'm like, no, because what would be the point? It'd be like if you did another X-Files movie. It's just everyone's getting too old or wouldn't be as attached to it anymore. And again, like any reunion movie, you would be like, why wasn't so and so in this? And they got everyone else. They'd have the contract disputes and actors having passed on. It's kind of like when they wanted to make a Galaxy Quest sequel / TV follow up, and then Alan Rickman died,
and it just got scrapped.
Yeah, Tim Allen's like, it'd still be an option. I'm like, Tim, you're an idiot. That's clearly them saying it to you nicely, which is, this is going to just sit here on the shelf and not be used.
Yeah, which was sad.
It is, and even more annoying how I see these celebrities or filmmakers pass away, who it's like, I've seen them, I had no idea, they were still alive, let alone they just died so young. And then I see other ones where, for lack of a better word, they just, I had no idea they had this disease. What a shame that they had to keep this secret, because otherwise the media would have a field day in their final, remaining days on this earth. So we're Trek is never going to be dead, because each generation is going to rediscover it. But at the same time, I mean, we should do an episode on and I could get a few other people here to anchor this with us, on the 10 best Star Trek fan films. Because much like Star Wars,
God, there were so many.
But there's a lot of good ones. Like there's even a original series follow-up sequel starring Chris Doohan, the son of James, who played Scotty.
Yeah, are you talking about the Phase 1?
Yeah.
That had Grant Imahara guest star on it a couple times.
Yeah. And the fact that they even got, they even made original movies. They even, had
Well,
other.
do you remember there was a trilogy of movies made, and
Yeah.
What's her name from that played Uhura was in them, and the
Yeah.
plot is extremely similar to the 2009 movie.
That's an interesting way of putting it, because they also had one.
And
where
those
they
came
had,
out before that.
Yeah, Cam from Ferris Bueller even reprised his role. I mean, they
Yep.
even had Walter Koenig from B5, reprise his original series track role. They had Tim Russ from Voyager. They had they even had, sometimes they had these track actors like they did with that other one, that where basically Paramount had a cease and desist saying you can no longer do fan films, even though it's nonprofit.
And that's what kept them alive that's what kept Trek popular for so long.
Yeah, so because they've killed the competition, I've still seen people occasionally come out with some. There's apparently this one that had Eric Roberts and a few other B-movie actors that has like a very low score on IMDb, so apparently it wasn't all that good. But I kept seeing a fundraiser for it, and I think it got funded, but I didn't see it come out. But yeah, they had all these other ones come out, and that one had a lot of big, well-known track actors. They had Gary Graham reprise his role from Enterprise. They had Tony Todd playing like a head of Starfleet during the first Klingon War. And it just, there's all these talented people, and it was amazing how these movies were filmed for like $400, and they looked like 10 million. And so the fans will always come first because they are what have kept it alive. Paramount knows this, and at the same time, until those guys all die or get cancer, they're not going to step down and sell the property to anyone else. So
yeah,
it's a shame though, because like I know there are hardcore people who've been watching it since they were kids or since their 20s, who are probably in their 40s or even probably their 70s by now. And so the fact that they can only watch this if they, I only have CBS All Access because of a friend gave me the login. Same thing with my sister. She has Disney Plus, so I get to see the shows. So it's annoying how.
Yeah, you might want to cut that part.
Oh, why?
That's supposed to share your accounts.
Oh, that's true. But yeah, no, we're sharing all these accounts, and it's just annoying how people who want to see more of this, they can only see it if it's on the internet. And Fox has talked about following up their other properties, but it seems like they're in the same quandary where, because Disney purchased them, even though they're leaving their TV franchise alone, everything is just all talk right now. Everything has to be superheroes or Star Wars or, Disney live action movies. And that's kind of where we are with Paramount. Everything has to cost less than $2 million, and everyone gets, residuals on the side or a bigger return based on what they get back.
Uh-huh.
And same thing with Track, like everything was filmed for like 2 million, while, other sci-fi shows like B5 were filmed for like 600,000 per episode. Right. So unless they want to go low budget and have the budget go to most of, the effects or one big actor, that they might, I think they eventually might shoot themselves in a corner. But at the same time, they're still going to have people rediscover it. There's plenty of people who are watching Discovery and like it just as much as Orville. And see, I, for one, just feel Orville is just more Track and its own unique entity.
I agree.
I like it in its own way. And all the time I see people say it's not that funny because
it's not that good. It's not that funny. It's,
yeah, they're expecting, I don't know. They're either not familiar with Seth MacFarlane's work or just different types of quirky humor, or they're, for lack of a better word, Stargate kind of had this thing, where it was kind of catering to Star Trek and Star Wars and being its own thing and its own fun, awesome show. And I said it says a lot when it came from a cult movie that was already kind of, destroyed by critics, but found a lot of return from audiences. So I feel like it's not quite the Stargate level, but it could easily become the next Lex or Odyssey 5, Firefly, or even, maybe that's too kind, but it could definitely be the next Farscape. If it just keeps being weird and wacky. And some people were down with it because they love Family Guy, so they're like, yeah, this is a live action Family Guy, Star Trek spoof. I can definitely get into it over Black Mirror. I can't get into any of Black Mirror, and I had that on all day.
Yeah, I've been wanting to try it, and I put one on, and I'm like, I'm not in the mood.
I haven't yet watched the track parody episode, and I like the actors that are in that, but I was just like, hey, I already went through the first 2 seasons. What? No, I'm good.
The Jacked Up Review Show can also be followed on Facebook on both the page and the group. Feel free to chat, leave questions, make requests for future episodes. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you so much for your various support, and we'll continue to entertain the hell out of you. Till then, take care.